Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Northern Lights, the online chat show which focuses on football in the north and northeast of Scotland. My name is Martin Johnston and each week I'm joined by our resident journalist and fellow Rothesloon, Dave Edwards. Also joining Dave and I each week are three well-known names from North football, both from the past and the present. Just a few guys reminiscing about the good old days and from time to time giving a distanced opinion on the modern game. A bit like Soccer AM meets the Antiques Roadshow. In this week's show, we'll be catching up with some unfinished business. Well, for Northern Lights anyway, because we welcome back for the first time in broadcasting history, three previous guests. Our first guest won 5 Highland League titles in a row with Huntly and was denied the opportunity to tell us all about it last time round. This time we'll be all ears. Welcome back, Martin Stewart.
Cheers, Martin. Thank you.
Martin, first of all, who's your hairdresser? I look like a cool-looking or a dyke. Who's your hairdresser? Because you look very pristine and smart.
Her name's Kathy. She did me a favour getting my hair cut before I came on here.
Well, lucky
looking
you.
like Wurzel Gummidge. Yeah?
As I am, yeah, sure. Martin, welcome back to the show.
Cheers, Dave.
Now, let's have a look at this miraculous, I mean, it's an unbelievable record. 5 Highland League titles in a row. You were part of an unbelievable team, an unstoppable team, really.
Yeah, I just turned up at Huntly at the right time. There's probably been better players than me and just came to clubs at the wrong time, but it just went right for me. Again, as soon as I signed, we started winning things, and then obviously when we won the first team, Pelly had just a couple of years. It was maybe a cup side, and then he signed the right players, and then we've become still a cup side, and we've got the league form right, and everything just came into place again.
Yeah, the rest is history.
Well, that's so to say.
Yeah. Well, I can honestly say it was one of the most devastating lineups I saw in all my time in Highland League football, and to win 5 in a row was unbelievable. We're going to delve into that in greater detail in a wee while, but for the moment, Martin, thanks again.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
Our second guest tonight was also denied the opportunity to tell us last time round about the end of his Highland League career and his venture into management. Tonight we'll put that right as Iain Thane talks about his days in the Formartine United dugout, and he will also be naming his all-time Highland League 11. Welcome back, Thain.
Martin, Dave, thanks very much.
Evening, Iain.
Guys.
Evening, Iain. You've not been sitting there since we spoke last time, but you've not been sitting there waiting to come back, no?
At my age, Davey, it's dangerous to sit in the same place for too long.
Now, let's start off by looking at your magnificent career at Keith. I mean, you're synonymous with Keith Football Club.
Yeah, I had I had 16 years there, as I touched on when we were on previously, Dave. 16 very happy years. Not a lot would have changed. I just wish it had been at a more successful time. You know, Keith, various league wins before I was there. I joined in 1986, and a few trophies in the bag after 2002 after I left. But having said that, you know, we won the League Cup, we won a couple of Aberdeenshire Shields, and we won the Highland League in the Millennium. So yeah, some great times. And if I may just while we touch upon that, sadly we lost one of our own at the weekend there, Alex Rutherford, who was club secretary for a long time, and Alex passed away Friday night into Saturday morning, and I was at the club, although his father was the chairman prior to Sandy Stables being in the chair. I never met his father, but when I arrived at the club, Alex was the secretary, and also Mrs. Rutherford, his mother, she was very much involved as well. She's sadly no longer with us either, but our thoughts, if I may, go out to the surviving Rutherford family. Alex and his family have always been an enormous part of Keith Football Club history, and that will always remain so.
Yeah, he was a quiet man, Alex. I was actually going to mention it. You get in before me. He was a quiet man. He was right-hand man to Sandy Stables for many a year. But he beavered away very quietly in the background. He never favoured, never wanted to be in the limelight, Alex, but he was a nice man.
Very, very nice, and always exactly the same. Anytime you met him, always exactly the same. And I didn't see so much of him, obviously, in recent years, but when we renamed the stand at Kynoch Park, the Sandy Stables stand, when he stood down as chairman in 2016, we went out for lunch. Sandy, Alex, Joan Stables, obviously, Andy Troop, Charlie Simpson, you know, and it was nice seeing him. You know, I have seen him since then, but yeah, no, fantastic man. And although he he turned 80 in January, he was still a reasonably fit man, and he'd been doing very well. He'd been volunteering across at Dr. Gray's and thoroughly enjoying that by all accounts. So sad loss. And as John Curran said to me at the start of the week, it's the end of a dynasty, the Rutherford name, out with Kynoch Park, but it will live on.
It's a poignant note to welcome you back to the show, Ian. Thanks. It's nice to see you again.
Thanks very much, Dave. Appreciate that.
Our third and final guest tonight is, without question a doubt, the main reason why we ran out of time last time round. On his previous appearance, he spoke for 18 minutes during his 3-minute intro, and we were an hour behind schedule after only 34 minutes. Welcome back to Northern Lights, the one and only Paul Darcy.
So are we making this a trilogy, guys? First is coming threes there.
Evening, Darcy.
How are we?
Oh, we're fine. We're fine. Now, I don't see the Rothie's badge on your back tonight. Is it there?
I've just stuck to the Australian sort of tones.
Good man.
So what we've got is we've got my bedroom in Dubai. I got the championship flag in 2004 and given to me the day I left. So I hung it up in the bed in Dubai. I had 6 months in Dubai, and then various other photos from my wee spell there. So the club means a lot to us, and it still does. So
you're big down under, Darcy. I believe you're very big in Australia.
No. We didn't do too badly, but yeah, it's. Oh, I wouldn't say I'm big at all, to be honest with you. I just went down a fortunate time with Grant Davidson, ex-Claff, and old Stewart Evans, ex-Fort William. So I was there for the first year. The two of us were there for the first year, and then I came back for a year. But yeah, no, I think it's more about that later. But how are you, Mr. Edwards?
Oh, I'm fine with that. I just came off Duff House about an hour ago in the rain, but my hair's just drying off. But again, for the third week in a row, I was in the buffer zone. That might not mean much to many people, but I've gone up 0.1 for the last 5 years, and to be in a buffer zone 3 weeks in a row is a huge achievement for me.
That's good going. I've went for 3.7 to 4.4, so I'm pushing 5, but it's anyway, it is what it is. But I buffer last week and got a cut, so I could have been into 5 already. But I'm still staring at 5 in the face. We're not quite there yet. But no golf tonight. Obviously anniversary, and I had to come on and see you guys. So that's my excuse. So you saved me from going to 5. So I appreciate that, Dave.
Well, that's very nice. I've gone up from the last 5 years. I'm going up 0.1 from 15, would you believe, up to 19.9, which is a disgrace. But one day soon I'm going to break that handicap, and I'll give you a game, Darcy.
More than welcome. As I said, yourself and Martin Stewart, I'm more than welcome anytime down to Newmarket. And we can have a bar down there, and Martin will give you some tips.
The same goes for Duff House Royal, and many congratulations on your anniversary today, Paul.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers.
Well, guys, you, 1.3, and yeah, you could be as well speaking Swahili. I mean, I still haven't got my head around Nicola Sturgeon's phase 3 yet, so I have no idea what you guys are speaking about. However, but congratulations, Paul, anyway, on your anniversary. Dave, viewing numbers, we cracked the 10,000 mark last week.
Yes, we're up to nearly 11,000 as we speak, Martin. Just short of 11,000 with an average of 900, which is remarkable.
I've got one shout out. I'm sure you'll have a few. I've got one shout. How do you pronounce the Australian club, Paul?
Ugali.
Ugali, right. Well, I'm going a big shout out to Ugali because they now follow Northern Lights on Twitter. So unless a certain Mr. Darcy's got a Ugali Twitter account in Scotland.
No.
So a shout out to our Australian friends down under.
Perfect.
Have you any shout outs, Dave?
No, it's been a very, very quiet week on Twitter. And would you believe that nobody has got the answer to my heat scratcher from last week? It was either too difficult or far too easy, and they thought, well, no bother. But I thought it was a good question. But can I give you the answer, Martin?
You certainly can. Apologies for those of you who think I can't spell, because I put the question in two halves on Twitter, and it was option A, B, C, D, E, and C. So obviously confused folk there. But enlighten us, Dave. What was the question and what was the answer?
The question was the legendary groundsman at Brora Rangers, Sandy Matheson. He's been there a long, long time, Sandy. Is Sandy 63 years old, 73 years old, or indeed 83 years old? And the second part of the question, has he been there 25 years, 35 years, or 45 years as groundsman at Dudgeon Park? Well, the correct answer is 83-year-old Sandy has been the groundsman for 45 years at Dudgeon Park. And what a magnificent achievement that is.
Unbelievable, unbelievable. That's just quite a remarkable record for anybody. Is that a record, Dave? Is there anybody else can match that?
Well, Thain might be able to put me right here, but the only one I can remember that's anything like that is a gentleman who sadly passed away, Dugan Duncan at Devon Vale.
Yes, of course.
And Dugan was a groundsman into his 80s and then passed away, but I'm not sure how long Dugan was there, but he was probably there when Thain was there as a youngster.
He was, Dave. He was a super guy, and the Vale Park, as it is again now, was always one of the best surfaces, particularly probably before they built the stand. I think it was even better then. Don't know if it was affected the drainage a little bit after that. Dugan actually got a testimonial from the Vale. It must have been about late 80s, because it was after I'd gone to Keith, and a few of us were invited back to play, and I couldn't play, unfortunately. I had an injury, so I wasn't able to play in it. But a groundsman who got a richly deserved testimonial, so I've no idea how long he would have been there. I certainly got the impression David been there for, tens of years by the time I was there, and so I wouldn't be surprised if it was numbers that might have rivaled Sandy's up there at Brora.
Yeah.
Well, Stewart McPherson, if you're watching, enlighten us, please. We'd like to know how long was Dugan groundsman at Princess Royal Park. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
And one thing about both of them, as soon as the match is over, Sandy's on his pitch replacing divots, and Dugan was exactly the same. And that was the way to do it. Right after the match, get on the pitch, treat it with the care it deserves, and stick the divots back in right away. And that was what both of them did.
Yeah. Big shout out to all groundsmen for Wick to Cove, although they don't need much grass cutting at Cove these days. Right enough. There you go. I've got a couple of shout outs based on the fact that we've just touched on Cove. Big shout out to, now I'm going to be crucified here because he certainly played for Peterhead. Keith Robertson, was he Keith as well?
Oh yes.
Yep.
Keith Robertson. Big shout out to Keith and all the ex-Highland League guys who this weekend made a massive effort for the My Name's Dodie Foundation. Obviously, we all know about my namesake, Martin Johnston, former Elgin City, Peterhead, Cove Rangers player. Martin has sadly has that dreaded motor neurons disease. And I believe the last count that these guys did a charity run at the weekend and they raised over £11,000 and still counting.
It's up to nearly 14 now, Martin.
Is that right indeed? So congratulations, guys. Fantastic. Martin, we wish you all the very best. And Keith, what a fantastic effort. You have to be applauded. Well done, sir.
Here.
Yeah, well done.
Just on that, did you see? Did you look at the who done the most Ks?
No.
No.
And he was probably one of the oldest guys that done it. It was Mark Perry.
Fred Perry.
Fred Perry.
Fred nearly done.
I've
15
got
Ks.
inside information on you for you there, because he does bugger all a day, so that he'll be more than able to run that extra mileage. Well done, Fred. Well done, Fred. I've got another shout out, Dave.
Yes.
Congratulations to Rothie Rovers, because they are the latest addition to the North Region Junior FA. It's still to be ratified by the Scottish Junior FA, but they've passed the local hurdle. It's normally just a matter of course the next stage. So congratulations to Brian Cormack, Mike Cormack's brother, for all the hard work and the fantastic pitch. Ian, have you played it, Rothie?
I haven't played there, no, but I've been out a couple of times. A superb setup, and I think it'll be the envy. I think it'll immediately become the envy of many junior clubs. I haven't been out this summer, but Mike was sharing a few photos from the last few weeks, in fact. And the Cormack family are a big part of it. Brian, as you say, is a club chairman and an awful lot more. And his father, Mike, and Brian's father, Alfie, he's on the park just about every day as well, you know. And there's a lot. It's a big community thing there, with the Cormacks are drivers behind it. So I'm absolutely delighted to see them get in there. They'll be a fantastic addition on and off the park. They've got a good squad of players as well.
Have you ever been at a game at Rothie, Dave?
Yes, I have. And what's the common factor between Peterhead and Rothie Rovers? There's a common factor there, Martin. Can you?
See, I was going to hit you with a Rothis one, but there you go.
I'll do that one first then.
Right.
Rothie Rovers and Balmore Stadium, Peterhead, were both designed by my mate Graham Webster, who builds golf courses.
Okay,
the pitch was both designed and put together, and they've both got a little camber. It takes the water away at the side. Graham Webster from Inverurie did both of them.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, the Rothis connection is Brian Cormack's Meritia Rothis Quine. So a big shout out to Iona for Rothis. If you go for a cup of tea, Dave, you'll be served by Iona.
Very nice. I look forward to it.
Great stuff. Okay, Dave, on this day, 16th of July, 1977.
Yeah, well, this ties into something we were talking about a couple of weeks ago with the three amigos from Inverness. It was, we're talking to Peter Corbett and Billy Urquhart and who was the other one?
Davy Milroy.
Davy Milroy, and they're all mentioned in this team actually. Round about that time, Inverness footballers, there was a game between an Inverness Select and Newcastle United about to take place all these years ago. Tommy McMillan of Thistle picked the team, the ex-Aberdeen centre-half, and he picked a team of Inverness-based players. But when you look at a team of Aberdeen-based players who were playing for Inverness sides at that time, it was unbelievably strong as well. I'll quickly run through the Inverness team that was picked that day. Billy McDonald of Carey was in goal. There was Roche Fraser and Alan Stevenson at full-back. Alan Stevenson of Clach. Davy Milroy, Robbie Giles and Peter Corbett. Titchy Black, Mackay, Billy Urquhart, Savage of Clach and Andy Penman of Carey. What a team that was with local players. But you could have picked another team of Aberdeen-based players. Sandy Shand, Alan Presley, a certain Darcy.
Surely not me.
No. I think probably your dad. It was probably your dad. And then there was Cumming, Bremner, Thistle, of Thistle, Summers of Cali, Ernie Drews of Thistle, McDonald of Cali, Bruce and Simpson of Thistle. And was that maybe
Jimmy Simpson?
Jimmy Simpson.
That'll be Jimmy Simpson, yep.
Yeah, and Davidson of Clark. So that was a strong team as well. I'd love to see that Aberdeen team of Inverness players play against the Inverness team. That would have been quite some match. But that was a topic all these years ago in 1977.
Superb, Dave. Where was you in 1977, Dave?
Oh, it was a long time ago, Martin. I've no idea. I probably was in 77. I think I was actually playing for Rothis Decimals still.
Okay. I was probably doing shouting abuse at you then.
Probably.
I was just going to the big school, I think, if I can remember it.
Happy days.
Martin Stewart, the story so far. Just a wee recap. Just give us a wee summary about your early days, the circumstances that you signed for Huntly. It was an 11th hour conversation. And then you had one or two Cup glory days, and then, of course, an international career in the Highland League as well.
Well, I ended up playing for Huntly Amateurs, and then Tiger Porter got wind of it, and I ended up playing for Elgin City Youth Team. We did really well in the BP Youth Cup. Got to the semi-final, played Dundee United. So I agreed to sign for Elgin, and Pele got wind of it, spoke to Pele, so I agreed to sign for Huntly. This is not quite Eddie Copeland style, because by all accounts he signed for 4 teams before he signed for.
Yeah, had a wee hand in that myself.
Aye, well, you can get the story better. Eddie got a bit muddled up when he's trying to tell you. But so I kind of let myself down by agreeing to 2 teams, but I think it worked out right in the long run, Ken. And obviously signed for Huntly, a couple of years playing right midfield, got moved up front. Some big Scottish Cup games for Huntly at that time, Ken. Big wins, a lot of exposure on TV, a couple of good nights out, as you do as a Highland League player in a cup game. And in the international you speak of, a couple of goals against Faroe Islands in a friendly. And then, well, as I say, is I moved up front, and that was us ready to start winning leagues and cups, etc.
Good times, Martin, and it was in big crowds as well.
There was big crowds for run-of-the-mill games against, no disrespect for William and the like. And they were maybe getting 500 coming to games, but it was pretty attractive football, I would have said. You're almost guaranteed goals.
I remember also that it used to be a huge effort to get games on for Scottish Cup ties. I remember being asked to come down and do it was unprecedented at the time, because I was asked to do a pitch inspection on a Friday at 3 o'clock. So they got an indication of whether it would be playable at the same time the following day. And when I arrived down, I was met by Jimmy Anderson. And I'm saying, I don't even have to go change, Jimmy. This is not looking good. He says, nah, you better get changed. He says, the BBC are coming here in the morning and we have to get the game on. And the next thing, there was a suggestion, what if we got a tarpaulin that covered the Hale pitch, which was unheard of in the Highland League at the time. And I said, well, you could, but how on earth are you going to achieve that? Next thing, a phone call. I think sponsors were Conan.
Conan's, yep.
And that afternoon, huge stuff. I think it was still a bit ropey on the Saturday, but it was enough to get the game.
I mean, that's a game I spoke with us from our game. Never been playable in a million years. It's a brick, Ken, but the game went ahead and we won a game 4-2.
I mean, it was a bit of history at Huntly with pitch inspections, because I had been asked once previously to do a pitch inspection. I think I was going to Forfar or Montrose or Broth or somewhere. So I'd went in past on the way down the road and I said, park's not playable just now, but if you do the following, it should be okay for 3 o'clock. So when I jumped in the car and drove off, everybody else at the park just jumped in their cars and went home. And I think it was the late Brian Christie arrived there at 3 o'clock to do 2 o'clock to do the game, and thought, what the? So he played the game, but it should never have started. So a couple of weeks later, I was due to referee an Aberdeenshire Cup semi-final. I can't remember who the opposition was. It was Huntly and whoever. And there'd been a lot of rain. There was had been a lot of frost, a lot of rain. And it was now really soft. And when I arrived, it was the same old story. The fixtures were beginning to build up, so there was a bit of pressure to get a game on. And they said, fit if we put sand on the pitch, we can get an unlimited amount of sand. I says, I ain't bother. This is about 10 o'clock in the morning. I says, I get the sand down. I said, but I'll tell you what, given that you didn't do nothing after inspected the park the last time, I'm biding until you carry out all the work. Well, lorry after lorry after lorry of sand, and it was like a Sahara. So come 1 o'clock, I nip home to get a quick change and come back. And when I arrived back at the ground, my 2 linesmen are waiting for me, and Brian Webster from Rothie being one. And I says to Brian, have you been out and had a look at the pitch? He says, no, we're fair to look, he says, in case the tide came in.
The problem with the pitch, and certainly in the earlier 90s, when Pele was the manager, we were just training the pitch. The groundsman says, oh, we can't train it, we're just training the pitch. Every night, doesn't matter the weather, trained on the pitch, just dug it up. That's why it's just an absolute mess for years. But I mean, I was nowhere else in that time. I was nowhere else to train in Huntly, and that was a thing Pele had. And fair play to the Aberdeen guys, trained in Huntly both nights a week, and they, I mean, that shows a commitment, and there's commitment in every Highland League club. But to come, I mean, it's all right for me to walk down the road, but they are coming out for Aberdeen after working all day, twice a week, training on the pitch. But that was Pele. It was on the pitch or nothing.
Dave, you're talking about cambers on pitches. Of course, Christie Park has got a unique camber because it actually cambers onto the pitch for the main stand. I don't know, is it quite as bad as it used to be, Martin? Or is it still the same?
But I don't think the social club didn't help. Kind of water come off a social club and ended up in the pitch. You know?
Yep. Certainly, I think the home
it's
players.
Never been in the pitches.
I think the home players had a knack of playing the ball doing the wing, knowing full well that the ball would just curl its way back in beside the corner flag. And of course, being surrounded by trees certainly didn't help either, because the leaves used to line. I used to think it used to be a bit of a plutery mess.
Certainly near the best pitch, but we managed to do all right in it.
Yep, certainly some remarkable games. Martin, we're going to keep you back a wee bit, keep your powder dry a wee bit yet about your 5 in a row. Over to you, Dave.
Can I ask Martin something? Martin, do you remember, is it my imagination, or was there once a complaint? It was probably with all the sand they put on the pitch at one time, as Martin said. Was there not a complaint at once from, I think it was Nairn County, that the Nairn County chairman went and measured the height of the goalpost at Nairn at one end, and it turned out to be less than 8 foot tall. It was something like 7.5 feet, and it was probably all that sand that Martin mentioned and built it up. Is that something that, I seem to remember something like that.
I'm not familiar with that.
I'll have to look that one up. Martin, you can maybe think about that one as well.
I think, Dave, you'd be surprised how many grounds have got these wee anomalies. Yes, I know, without naming names, I know one Scottish League, one team that up until, when did I join? 4 years ago. One of the goalposts was the wrong height at one end. I actually remember going to, not a Highland League club, but going to Montrose as a wet behind the ear assistant. I'm trying to think who the referee was. Bill Crombie. Remember Bill Crombie?
Yes.
And we were inspecting the pitch, and I looked at the goals at Montrose, and the hooks for the net on the bar were actually on top of the bar. Not behind the bar, on top of the bar. And I'm studying this, and he says, right, obviously, fairly new match official. What's your thoughts? I says, well, that can't be legal. He says, well, now you have 2 options. He says, you can stop the game from going ahead and never, ever being appointed to a Scottish League game again. Or you can say nothing and put a letter in later and never refereeing a game in the Scottish League again. So you'll just have to do what we've been doing for the last 14 years. Say nothing. And that's the way it was.
Great stuff. Iain Thane. Iain, before we go on to look at your team, your all-time team that you played with and against, can we have a quick word about your short spell in the managerial dugout?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, after I left Keith, and before I reached that stage, I had a couple of years at Inverurie, one of which I effectively missed with a broken leg, unfortunately, but came back, played the entirety of the following season. Was fortunate enough to be part of the first locals side to win a senior trophy, Aberdeenshire Shield, and then a short spell at Cove, but unfortunately broke the other leg, completely unrelated. And at the age of 40, I realised that was time to call it a day. Cove were fantastic. Locals and Cove, both fantastic football clubs, as you'll be aware. John Sheeran was the manager at Cove in his first spell as manager. And John was great. Keith Moorhouse as well. You know, they gave me a job. They offered me a job I broke my leg in the January. So by the time I was kind of getting back on my feet again, it was towards May, June time. They'd offered me a job sort of in the youth development. I was going to be looking after and assisting with one of the youth teams, which was great, you know, on the coaching side. But then kind of out the blue, around about May, June time, I got a phone call from one of your guests from last week, actually, Dave Cormie. And at that time, Dave and I both live in Inverurie. Dave and I didn't know each other particularly well. I certainly knew who he was, and we'd been in each other's company a couple of times. Iain Taylor, former Aberdeen winger who had been Dave's assistant at Formartine in the juniors at the time, Iain had stepped down due to his work commitments, and Dave decided that he obviously needed to get another assistant, and he made a phone call. Now, I've always said to this day that I think the only reason he thought of me was because they'd already put the initials on the training kit, and Taylor and Iain Thane have both got the same initials. So I think that's how I got the approach. But no, I went and worked with Dave. It was the first time I came across the inimitable Athol Cadger, our chairman. Ross Mackay was his vice at the time. And I went in there, a good junior side with an experienced side. I had 15 months that I thoroughly enjoyed. It was a real education. Dave was an experienced manager, obviously, and a real character. So I was in there 15 months, and then Dave got the chance to go to Huntly Martin, actually, after Billy Anderson, who had Billy and Mike had obviously done fantastically well, winning the championship again, which I'm sure we'll touch on later. But Billy and Huntly had parted the ways, and Huntly had approached Dave to go there as manager. And Dave's initial thought was to recruit Mike, who was quarterback, who was already there as Billy, and had been as Billy's assistant. But Mike decided at that stage it wasn't for him. So David asked me if I would go. I didn't feel confident enough to go into coaching Highland League players, to be honest. I'd only been finished playing 15 months. So I decided to sit tight at Formartine and throw my hat in the ring there. And Athol gave me the job. So having had 15 months as assistant, I had 15 months as mowing man. I brought in Scott Taylor and Lenny McDonald alongside me. Again, real learning curve. Dave actually recruited quite a number of our players from Formartine to go to Huntly, which I had absolutely no issue with. I remember one or two people saying at the time, "Oh, he's come back and, you know, taking this player and that player." But to be fair, I've always been an advocate that players, if they get the opportunity to play at a higher level, I'm absolutely delighted, you know. So, and Dave and Huntly were more than generous in their dealings with us at Formartine. So the boys went away. We had to do a bit of rebuilding. We had, we had good spells and bad spells. We had a good little run. And then, to be honest, we had a dreadful run. And it's one of the reasons, to be honest, Dave, that I've never, ever been surprised since then at how loyal Athol Cadger has been to managers, because I know how loyal he was to me, albeit the stakes weren't as high, but football's football, you know. And we were going through a bad spell, a spell where, to be honest, he could have sacked me 2 or 3 times over. He never, ever did. And he never put me under pressure to that degree either. But to be honest, I remember literally getting in the car at East End at New Advocates Park. We lost again. This particular day, I got in the car, my son was with me. He was quite young at the time. And I remember actually thinking out loud, you know, I've run out of ideas. I can't do this. And boys being boys. My laddie was, like I say, Cam was maybe 13. He'd said, no, of course you can, because sons think that their dads can. But I went home that night, I slept on it, and the next day I felt the same. So having had 22 years in the Highland League, nearly 3 years in management, without sounding over dramatic, I had a sort of gut feeling that I'd never ever felt before. And that was that it was time to get out. And again, you know, reflective of Athel's support, I went in to see him on the Monday to resign. And even then, despite the fact that I could have been saving him a job, you know, he was still persuading, he was all for persuading me to stay. He was fantastic. But I'd have been doing him and the club an injustice if I'd stayed. As of that game, I was 100% into it, but as of that game, and I had that feeling, I knew it was time to get out. And it was a fantastic club, as you'll be aware, Dave, and Martin, certainly you've worked there as well. Great people, all the girls and guys behind the scenes, fabulous, you know. I thought Colin Grant, absolute heart and soul, you know, and no one was happier than me when they made their way into the Highland League. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed working for Dave. I made more friends and more acquaintances within junior football. I'd never been involved in junior football before. Thoroughly enjoyed it. You know, and I never ever came out thinking, oh, I don't want to do that again. I came out because I'd run out of ideas. Obviously, time's moved on now, but no, it was a super time at an excellent club that's gone from strength to strength since then. So no thanks to me, right enough, but it's gone from strength to strength.
Thanks for that, Iain. To finish off this little segue, no one is better positioned to look at a Highland League all-coming or all-stars that you played against. You're so well positioned to pick a goalkeeper, but I bet it was one of the hardest jobs ever to pick a goalkeeper to play in your team.
To be honest, Dave, it was interesting when Martin sent me the email, or yourself and Martin sent me the email suggesting, you know, I pick a Highland League select, and I said to Martin, you know, is it based on people I've played with, I've played against? And to make it even more difficult, he said with, against, or watched. Now, bear in mind, I watched my first Highland League game probably around about 1974-75. It was Nairn County against Ross County at Station Park in Nairn, sun-kissed as it always is. The final score was Nairn County 7, Ross County 5. That was the way back in 74-75. So you consider I'm still watching Highland League football now. That's 45 years on.
You'll need to be picking any of that two goalkeepers then, Iain.
Well, it might be, you never know. So what I've done, and I hope you guys are okay with this, I've kind of limited a little bit, Dave, and what I've done is I've based my select on players I played against between my time playing regularly in the league was from 1983 to 2005, still 22 seasons. People I've played against, but in amongst that, as you can imagine, I've got a number of honourable mentions for some of my former Keith teammates. But just before I go on to goalkeeper, if I may, it's interesting to see how, when I look back, how the league had evolved in that time. As I say, I started playing regular for the Vale in '83 and finished at Cove in 2005. But when you look in that time, 1985, Fort William joined the league. 86, incredibly, Cove joined the league. 94, Ross County, Cali and Thistle left the league, and Wick Academy came in. 2000, you had Elgin and Peterhead going. In 2001, you had the locals coming in. Obviously, for Martin, Turriff and Strathspey were in 2009 after I was out of it. So the league had changed a lot in that. But again, it's interesting because of the 22 seasons I had, the first 11 years were actually with the old league, if you like, up until Cali, Thistle, County went, and the second 11 were without them, and half of that had Peterhead and Elgin as well. And on the personnel side, it's interesting as well, because as well as the league evolving, generations evolve. I watched a game 3 or 4 years ago. It was for Martin against Cove at Harlaw Park in Inverurie, when Cove were obviously playing out of there. And I looked out there, playing for Martin was Paul Lawson, Scott Ferris and Graham Roger. playing for Cove Rangers was Mitchell Megginson, Blair Ewell and Daniel Park. Now, to me, back in my playing days, it was Willie Lawson, Billy Ferris, Graham Rogers Sr., Mike Megginson, Raymond Ewell and Graham Park. Worse than that, Don Cowie's just retired to step into coaching. And I said to someone recently that I played against Don Cowie. It wasn't Don Cowie, 33-year-old. It was Don Cowie Sr., his father. And just going back to one of your guests, before I go into my goalkeeper from last week, I played against Rex Hunter in my very first season and went on to play against Chris Hunter. So that's how the league evolved in my spell, which maybe sets the scene to the width of choice I've had. In terms of the goalkeeper, Dave, and you and I have touched upon it before as both as former goalkeepers. My first hero growing up in Nairn, and it wasn't a man I played against. He was just before my time. Was the wonderful Richard Konzak, fantastic goalkeeper. My first goalkeeping hero, and Nairn's goalkeeper when they won the league for their only time so far in 75-76. Absolute hero, fantastic. And a goalkeeper, great agility, not the tallest, fantastic agility. Back in the day, bravery, back in the days when nowadays outfield players wear gloves. Back in those days, the goalkeepers didn't wear gloves, you know. And Richard was like that. So he was slightly before my time. He doesn't come into my choice, but certainly my first goalkeeping hero. Some of the names that I looked at. You know, I go back to my early days. We spoke before about my time as an S4 at Cali. Billy McDonald was in the first team then, and Billy was a beast. Training with Billy was an education in itself. A league winner with Clach. He must have won it, I think, three times at least with Cali as well. Billy McDonald was a wonderful goalkeeper, and at that time, Billy McDonald, Richard Konzak, and the fantastic Bobby Gray were probably the three main goalkeepers. Also around when I came into the league, John Sutter at Brora Rangers, the man from Thursday with the great big hands, and Hamish Morrison back in the day, played with Ross Kent and spell at Cali as well. Coming forward a little bit, names that came to mind, Jim Buchan, Big Juggers, played at Peterhead, went off to Canada to make his life in coaching, and Alan Main, a young Alan Main, who came through at Lossiemouth and Elgin City. It was last game for Elgin against us at Keith, just before he went to Dundee United, and then obviously an illustrious time at St Johnstone. So those are the sort of names, and then coming a little bit, you know, back in the early days. Darcy's disappeared. He doesn't hear about goalkeepers.
He's good enough.
Back in the poor Darcy, someone speaking more than Darcy. He's decided.
Sorry, my alarm was set to book my time for a golf for a weekend, and it's got to go off continuously. I can't put it on snooze without switching it off. Sorry, Ian.
And my and some people won't believe this, but you guys will, because you guys will remember. When I was at Devon Vale, just before I went to Keith, playing against the Inverness Thistle side, they went on to win the league. And the Inverness Thistle side I first played against had Les Fridge in goals, former Nairn County manager. Les went away to Chelsea, and Jim Calder, who was a striker with the Jags at the time, became a goalkeeper. I went on to have an incredible career with the Jags, and then with Cali Thistle, played in the game at Celtic. So guys like that come into my thinking, Dave. Archie McLean made his name at Fort William and then at Cove. John Gardner, I mean, 5 winners' medals along with Martin. Billy Gordon, you know, more than 700 games. Craig Hinchcliffe at Elgin. Ivor Perry, fantastic goalkeeper, great with his feet. Scott Tate, league-winning goalkeeper at Peterhead. And one or two others closer to time. Dickie Bowman, probably a very underrated goalkeeper, I thought, Richard Bowman. I think he was your league-winning side, Martin, in 4-5. Barry Thompson and James Blanchard, league-winning goalkeepers at Vale. Mark Cool came in after me at Cove. Andy Shearer, a fantastic Keith career. Stuart McKenzie at Cove. A bit later, a bit more up to date. is now doing so well in League Two. And of the guys in the current league, I think Kevin Main is probably Kevin Main's right up there, and still is. Kevin was a 15-year-old at Lossy, came through, and to me, and just to touch on the current goalkeepers, in my humble opinion, Kevin Main's still right up there near the top. Andy Reid is probably, arguably, Loco's greatest ever goalkeeper. But the man that I think's top right now is Joe Mallon. I think Joe's a fantastic goalkeeper. I think he's got everything. I think he's got presence, brilliant with his feet, makes big saves, dominates, fantastic hands. And when I came to make my choice, there is a link there. When I came to make my choice, and my choice for the goalkeeper of my Highland League 11, 1983 to 2005, is another former Brora Rangers goalkeeper, is John Sutter.
The joiner from Thurso.
A joiner from Thurso. Big hands, big heart. Super guy, John. Again, not the tallest, but what a goalkeeper. Positionally, he was superb. Again, agility-wise, he was excellent. And nice guy, Big John. And difficult choice, though. I probably boiled it down to those early day eras, the Billy McDonald, Bobby Gray, John Sutter. And I've just tipped the wink here, and John Sutter's my choice as a goalkeeper, Dave.
Yeah. And his son is currently a coach at Wick Academy.
He is indeed. I was watching a game at the Locos a couple of years ago now, and Donald Allen, Big Donald, who was a centre back and travelled regularly with John Sutter. I think they were both Thurso boys, and Donald was down watching his lad, playing with Wick down at the Locos, as I say, it was 2-3 years ago. And I was having a drink with Donald afterwards, and then he headed away, and then he suddenly reappeared, and he said, "Oh, I've got someone you need to meet." And this was John Sutter's lad, who's his double. Anyway, I could see right away before he told me. He's a bit better looking than his dad. But no, that's exactly right. But John, I think his laddie was a good player as well, but was finished with injury early age and is making his way in coaching. John Sutter for me was a fantastic goalkeeper, but as you can hear by the names I've maybe rabbited on about there's so many others I could have put in, and I'm biased to the position, of course, but some in there are absolutely priceless.
I wholeheartedly agree with your choice. He was a fantastic keeper, John Sutter. You brought back very many happy memories to me, Iain, because way back in 70-71, the North of Scotland schools trial at Station Park, I couldn't get a game until Freddie O'Brien broke his arm at Fraserburgh. So I played for the East, along with Sandy Comfort and Charlie Esselman and Jackie Taylor, people like that I'd never played with before. And there was 3 goalkeepers on show that day. Billy McDonald played for the North. Richard Konzak played for Central, and I played for the Fraserburgh Peterhead Mintlaw guys. And would you believe, out of the 3, I got picked to go forward for the North the Fourth against South the Fourth, and eventually got my cap. But great memories and great goalkeepers, both Billy McDonald and Richard Konzak. Really nice guys.
Oh, fantastic. Absolutely tremendous.
Yeah. Happy days. Back to you, Martin.
Yeah.
Paul, before I ask you to do a wee summary on your career leading up to going down under, just want to point out, when Iain spoke about breaking was it your left leg that you broke at Locos?
I broke my left leg at Locos and my right leg at Cove.
And he said he broke his right leg at Cove, and he says it was unrelated. The legs were actually related. It was the incidents that were unrelated. Yeah.
I'm not sure if Darcy heard that, but I think he was away booking the golf at that time.
I think so.
Well, I did understand, but yeah, I just.
Darcy, give the viewers a wee summary in your career. Bonaccord, Rothie.
With a wee spell at Bonaccord, really, like as Thain touched on earlier, with Scotty Taylor and current youth development guy at Cove, Gary Hake. And went from there to Rothie, which I'd 18 months, which I probably missed about 4 with a broken ankle, unrelated. And then I left Rothie and signed for Bucky. So I was at Bucky for 6 years. I missed a season there as well with an injury called osteus pubis, which I tore the muscle off the pubic bone, which basically affected my adductors, and I've seen 4 physios, and then I was at Mark Perry's stagger, I was at Fred's stagger, and I was speaking to John Sharp, the physio at Pataudry. So Darcy, come in and see us. Went in and seen him. Now after seeing 4 different physios, within 2 minutes, Sharpie's like, here you go and see a surgeon. So I had to go and see a surgeon, had an MRI scan at Wood End, and then, cut a long story short, I'd been out for the best part of 16 months. He said, just leave it, it's healed, it's healing. So I was back out for another couple of months, went on loan to Stonehaven, and then signed for Huntly, and a wee spell at Huntly, then moved on to Keith and played with, obviously I've been fortunate enough to play with both these guys in this call tonight, and which was an experience, because it for myself, coming from Bucky, was just going through a transitional period, and obviously to get the shout to play for Huntly, who'd been basically the domineering club over my career in a Highland League. And I'll just say, Martin, every time I speak to Yates tells me he's the only person with 6 medals in a row. So
Yep,
anyway,
he is that.
and he doesn't let me forget it. He does.
I will say he only arrived at Christmas the first time, so Eddie didn't believe that really.
So it's 5.5 in.
5.5. Tell him, Martin.
So so to play with like Martin and like Tommy Wilson, and work under Willie Lawson and Kevin Will at the time, and then I moved on to Keith and played alongside likes of Stilly, Thainer, Derek Nichol, Gibby. Still waiting for Gibby to buy my beer. It's been that's 19 years ago.
Don't hold your breath.
I know, but I know it was good. And then Martin Allen never offered me a deal, so it came to an opportunity to go to Devon Vale. Greg was building a team at Devon Vale. I decided against it. I was working shifts, and then a couple of seasons in the juniors with Banky St Ternan. I played with Alexa wee Davy Calder, who's ex-Keith, ex-Elgin City. I don't know where he is now. He's got his teeth in his hair done, so I didn't recognise him. But I had a wee spell with him at Bankery. And then, lo and behold, an opportunity to come up and actually I went back to Rothie before I went to Oz. So I signed for Rothie. The Saturday the season started, we played Clack away. Played Clack at Clack. The Beach 2-1 up here. Clack won the league. Big Grant Davidson scored that day, who I'll touch on more later on. I played for Rothie. I signed for them for a 3-month deal. And then about October, November time, there was an advert in the paper, and Michael Craig and Kevin Garrett were both at Huntly when I were there. They were out in Oz, I think, the season or 2 seasons before. So I got chatting to them, and then lo and behold, I sent a couple of emails, a couple of phone calls before, obviously Skype and Zoom and what have you. Touching base with a guy called Tony Catanzariti, who I'll touch on a bit more later on as well. He took us out. I got the letter, which is one of the photographs in the background of my left-hand shoulder, telling me I could go out, and they've accepted me to go and play. And I got loan visa, and then that was it. So that's a summary of where we're up to now.
Yep. I'll go back to the injury, and I'm not going to for a second suggest that you were fortunate to have an injury as serious as you did when you were at Bucky, but would it be correct in saying, or really correct in saying, that it's a type of injury that perhaps 10, 15 years prior to that would have finished players' careers? The opportunities to correct things that go wrong now and back then is certainly far better
Of course.
than what they are now.
Yeah.
It's come a long way for stand up and stamping it.
I think what you're saying is, like, Moleman done his cartilage. He was come back off a bus in Manchester. They used to park the car in it's a bus. It was Mains or wherever it was, in place in the town. He was walking backwards in Cheerio, and he fell down a manhole and done his cartilage. And he was out for the best part of a year. But now
Thainer's tried his very best to laugh here, but
no, I know. But now a cartilage operation is what, 6 to 8 weeks in your back training.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show. Now my injury, when I spoke to Sharpie in more detail about it, he just said that it's the same injury Scott Booth had, but it was never diagnosed as osteoporosis. It just kept, because it affects you. Basically, you've torn a muscle off the groin, and it was like a groin strain. But even Malky Murray was a gaffer at the time, and Malky's like, "Oh, you're finished for the season." He knew about it, and I'm like, "No, we'll be fine." But no, I kept coming back, and it was more irritating. And it got to the stage that 14, 15 months in, I just started training again, and it healed itself. But I knew I had a permission to start training again. But yeah, look, I think definitely. I think come time in the next maybe 10, 15 years, your cruciate ligaments are still for 8, 9 months. They might be down to 3 or 4 months out now, but it's just more on technology.
Yep. Well, that's a plus, but on the reverse side of that, I suppose, I'm sure we see it all the time, players tend to pick up injuries very easily these days. Martin's shaking his head. I just think, is it something in the way they train, or is it just a case, there is a very low threshold, not necessarily by the player, but the physio, etc., will always play very, very safe. That seems to be the reverse of the fact that they've got the technology to fix the things that are wrong.
Yeah,
things tend to go wrong much easier.
I don't think the players nowadays drink enough. They're more, in a nutshell. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but there was never. Obviously, the top level, your Premier League in England or the Premier League here, they're athletes now. They're not the training 9 till or 10 till midday, then going for a couple of games of snooker, the bookie, or a round of golf. It doesn't happen these days. Obviously, that's going back to when I was growing up in the 80s. That was the norm. You'd be a full-time footballer. You'd train till lunchtime, and then you'd go and be. Frank McDougall played snooker. Paul Merson and Tony Adams, they went for a few pints. So I just think that they are obviously there's more strain on the body now than what it is. I'll tell you a story. The MCG in Melbourne was actually MCG was a cricket ground. There was so many cruciate ligaments done that year. They relayed the turf because they thought it was a turf. So there's different fundamentals coming into it. Maybe it was a hybrid turf or something, I don't know, but they actually relayed the turf because there was that many ACLs getting done. So we don't know. There's definitely more emphasis on fitness, and they're ripped athletes now. Some of them are like the boy from the boy plays wide and the right for Wolves. He's just top heavy.
Traore.
He looks like he just come out of the gym. But look, that's just the way the modern game's going. But who am I to say what's wrong and right? And there's more emphasis on. Personally, I think there's more emphasis on fitness than ability. If you can run, look for Chris, you can run all day. You couldn't kick a football, but if you can run all day and kick a football, you've got half a chance. Okay, you do need some ability, but I just think there's more emphasis on ability than on fitness levels. And I mean, I think I touched on this last time. I came back in 2009. I up to Bucky. Obviously back in the Highland League bus, like a Keith bus was, and I've heard stories about with Eddie from the Huntley bus. And I up to Bucky with Haken and Greg Carroll. And the boys are drinking protein shakes on the way back. Here's me with a 6-pack of Becks. So maybe it's changed. Maybe it's been changed for the last 10, 15 years. I don't know. It's been a long time. I mean, was it Brora with yourself and for Martin a couple of years back? There was still a jovial bus on the way back from there. That's a Brora trip. I don't know if it's the same if Brora were to go to Keith or Huntley or Turriff or whatever. I don't know if they are. I mean, everyone's got to look after their body. As I said, I personally just think there's more emphasis on fitness. There's got to be, because everyone's fitter.
I think your point. I think sorry, Darcy. I think Martin, you touched on threshold there. Martin Johnson, you touched on threshold there. I do wonder if there's a little bit of a lower threshold with players as well, whether they grow up now with this mentality that if they're not 100%, they don't play now. all of us round this call, if we'd only played when we were 100% fit, I suspect we'd have played in 3 games a season, if you're lucky, you know. And you didn't want a medal for that. You wanted to play. I think part of it is the mentality, and that's not doubt. And sometimes it's the individual, but sometimes it's just the way that the environment they're being brought up in. I mean, if you look at it, if you think of some of the dressing rooms that we shared, if you'd suggested you'd a niggle and you weren't going to play, Martin, can you imagine? You know, any of these guys. So you've got that. I think that's one part of it. The other part of it, and call me old school if you will, but have you ever looked at the current football boots? I don't remember it right through my career, anyone breaking a metatarsal. But now, if I pick up a football boot, not one of my old black ones that's in the garage, I hasten to add, but one of these sort of fiberglass ones that they wear now, no wonder they're breaking bones in their feet, because the boots are like slippers. So, you know, that can't help either, you know. Yeah. And that goes back to your point, Darcy, you know, you're looking at, you know, being fleet of foot and being streamlined and everything else, so they make the boots lighter and everything else. But the flip side to that, maybe I'm just ignorant, but the flip side to that, I reckon, is if you look at those boots, they can't possibly protect you the way that our boots did.
Yep.
You know?
I would agree with
So
that.
I think there's contributing factors like that, you know, personally.
Just on that. Sorry, Martin. Just on that. I remember I was in the ministry one night, and I think Huntly got beat in the Scottish Cup, and I think I was speaking to Tommy Wilson. Davy Morland was there, and Marco De Barris, I think he turned around and said that he didn't feel mentally fit to play this day. Yep. He slept on a couch or something. Now, fair play to Marco with the balls to do that, but if I'm going to tell Davy Morland I'm not mentally fit to play, be prepare for the flashback. But yeah, look, I think that's the only person in my era that I've ever heard somebody turn around and say, if I was anything underlined there, I don't know, but he just turned around and said he wasn't mentally fit to play, apparently. Martin, you might be able to clarify that.
I think that might have been the Falkirk bed story, is it, Martin?
It is the Falkirk bed, yep, it is. But Marco was a different kettle of fish. I mean, he's Marco's the kind of guy, if there was a hole in his socks, then I play. There's a big carry on, I've got a hole in my socks, the grass is too long, the bar's too net pumped up enough, the grass isn't green enough, the wind's too much. But to be fair to Pele would just pander to him, because he can't, if you tell him he's the greatest player in the world, get him the socks without the holes, he'll produce the goods. And by God, he could produce the goods. But if I could go back to, we were speaking about players now, I heard somebody doing a podcast, I think it was Mark Chisholm saying it, when he went back to help at the Vale, they're ready to go, the ref's knocking the door, and 4 of them's doing their hair in the mirror. Now, in our dressing room, minutes before you speak of Davy Morland made himself sick every game. He's so pumped up, ready to go. He's in the toilet making himself sick. Can you imagine Davy Morland with this boys doing their hair? No way.
Wow.
As Iain said about injuries, I mean, I've had heaps of injuries, but once the game starts, you forget about the injury. And if it's so bad, you'll be off. But if you get a wee knock, game starts, and you don't even think about it.
Yeah, I think more than often that shot of adrenaline gets you over that threshold. Yep.
Definitely.
On the same topic, Martin, I don't think training on an AstroTurf surface does any good. If you've got a wee knock, a wee niggle, I think training on AstroTurf where there's no give at all certainly doesn't help.
No, I don't think it helps, but no. We've got to realise things have changed again.
You're talking, and I will draw attention to the fact that Ian sniggered when he mentioned your dad's injury.
No, I'm just thinking, you know what I was thinking that? It was nothing to Darcy's dad, because I've met Darcy's dad back in the day. But I'm just thinking, that could have been any of us, you know what, getting off a massive water back. I can't believe that in 22 seasons I didn't fall down a manhole or anywhere else, Darcy, to be honest.
A very unusual injury, and it got me remembering a conversation I had with, and here's a name from the past, Neil Clayton.
Yes.
Neil Clayton, John Clayton.
Played in there in County as well.
Yes. Yep, I think when Forsyths and Rothis converted Capardonagh Distillery into a workshop and they removed all that barrels, I'm pretty sure they found at least a dozen Fitbis that Neil had put in there over the years. But he told me a story once. Neil was actually at Cardiff City. He was one of the many recruits from Murrayshire at one time that was down at Cardiff City. and he was involved in a very unusual injury to a player, but it actually helped. I might have the figures wrong. I'm sure I've got the figures wrong, but I think it increased the player's value by £40,000. And what had happened was, the stadium at Cardiff City at the time, Neil, who was an apprentice, and Neil, along with half a dozen other apprentices, were sent down to the chairman's house, which was just down at the bottom of the road from the stadium, to put a grand piano into the hall because there was a function on the Saturday night. So the youngsters go down and remove the grand piano from said chairman's house, and they're pushing it up the road. And they've got a young man by the name of John Toshak sitting on the piano as they're pushing it up the road. And John at the time had been subject to a move to Liverpool, and they had bid something in the region of £60,000 for him. Anyway, they're pushing him up the road, and lo and behold, the front leg gives way and traps John Toshak, and he breaks his ankle. So there was a lot of explaining to do, and obviously the transfer was off, but it was good news at the end of the day, because once he was fit and regained his place again, he moved to Liverpool for, I believe, £100,000. But it's got to go down in history as one of the most unusual injuries to a player. Dave, over to you.
Talking about Neil Clayton, I played with Neil. Was an S-form signing at the same time as me, 1970-71 at Elgin City, and I played with Neil. He was an old-fashioned type of striker, a bit Kevin Bremnerish. You know, he big laddie, red hair, a good player. But his brother, John Clayton, he became a professional in England, and if I remember rightly, John Clayton played for Wolves amongst other clubs, and had quite a successful career in professional football.
Derby County, I think he was at.
Derby County, yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, going back to that 5 in a row, the famous 5 in a row, Martin. It wasn't 5 managers, and it wasn't just one manager. You had 1 or 2 managers during that highly successful season.
Well, with 3 managers, but I think most of the credits to go to Pele. I mean, he brought in the nucleus of this players, again. And as I say, the first couple of years, maybe a cup team, and like a Kevin Walker, Dougie Roothy, McGinley, Marco, Stevie Lennox, Gary Whitelogs. Pele signed them all, and it was time to, although it was a cup team, it's time to make a challenge again. But bear in mind, Elgin had won a league, and Elgin were a fantastic side. There was a good Cali side, good Cove side. Ross County had won a league a couple of years previously, twice. A good Lossy side, so it was dark horses, I would have said, for the league. But we still was winning cups. I mean, we won the League Cup against Fraserbrand, we won Aberdeen Cup against Peterhead. And but I mean, the league was going well. And again, at Christmas, as I said earlier, we signed Craig Yates and Andy Pettis. That just gave boys more competition and maybe a rest, because I mean, that year we played 50 games. Yeah? But I mean, we was in pole position the whole time, and we won the league up at Inverness Thistle. It was 4-1, and we won the league with 5 games to go. Okay? That was the first team. And we won the league by 18 points to Carly. So I mean, that was important that we won that league, because if they'd been out and they would won us 5 after Carly, Ross County and Thistle were out, maybe it would have been a bit of a little bit of Carly won and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, 18 points is the thing. And the thing of mine, at first, we won the league at Inverness Thistle, and the thing it stuck, and I was probably too young to realise if it was really happening again. But when you seen Jimmy Anderson, you speak with there, Forbes Shand and Pop McGregor, and you could see if it had meant to them, how many years they'd put in all the work at Huntly, and the emotion and the basis what it meant to them. I mean, as I say, I was probably naive. When I joined Huntly, I just started winning. I mean, there's nothing to do with me as such, but I just thought I'd just fit happening, Ken. But I mean, I think it is important that we won when Carly and them was here. That was the big thing. And I mean, in that year, we played Carly in their very last game. we got a trophy on the last game of the season, Christie Park, and it was Carly's game. So they've got fans there, obviously protesting about the merger and what have you, and we've got fans just wanting to depart again. So 50 games, I played every minute, every game that year, and lucky enough, I scored 40 goals, so I did my bit for winning the league, yeah. And the young player of the year, I won it again. Obviously, no red card this day because Brian Bendel wasn't the ref in any of the games.
No that you bear a grudge.
No. And I was runner-up to player of the year. In fact, I will say about that, and it's nothing to do with me being runner-up. For Huntly, a team that dominated for the whole 90s, never ever had a player of the year, which is just remarkable. When you win a league by 18 points, 17 next year, 16 a year after, and Huntly never had a player of the year. I think it was why you won it again. It was like the manager was supposed to vote, and then I think I was even journalists voting, and if you missed a couple of games, that was you. But I find it strange that Huntly didn't have a player good enough to be the player of the year in that time. Like, I mean, but that was the first year, and it's the most special league. Nobody says it's a special league, but it's got to be. Huntly never won a league for 64 years, Ken. So it was just a great day. I mean, I was guys there I seen for Huntly. Whenever we got up to Kings Mills, I was just Huntly people our way, boys that never an interest in football, but it was just a huge thing for us. And I think I mentioned it last day, myself, Gary White and Brian scored 93 goals, Ken, so yeah, it was well. That's for it. Most of the action came for the three strikers, got most of the goals, obviously. But that was the first team. The second team, again, Pelly's the manager for the second team. Again, we've won a qualifying cup against Keith Thain. John Gardner scored the winning penalty.
Sorry, I remember it, honestly.
You remember it?
I'll tell you a story about that in a bit, but go on, aye.
I'll tell you, John took penalties for us, and it wasn't just the end of the season. I bet you John scored maybe 10 penalties over a few years at Huntly. John could have played out, and that's no an exaggeration. Brilliant with the ball at his feet, yeah. But, and we won Aberdeenshire Cup. We beat Cove 3-0. But at the start of that season, we lost 4 of the first 10 games, and I remember we lost to Brora. Brora have never been a team they were now. The first game of the season, unfurling the flag, we lost 2-0. And we lost 4 of the first 10, but in the last 20 games, we won 18 and drew 2. So again, we won a league by 17 points for Cove. And that was my first time I'm getting injured, kind of a knee injury, a foot injury. And I only played 30 games here and managed to score 29 goals. So it was still all right. But then, that's Pelly leaving now. I'll remember touching this a bit later. You want me just to go through other leagues, Dave, right?
Yes, I think we should. It's we're on a roll, Martin. We're on a roll.
I'll be brief. So, Dougie Rugby took over. Not much change, just the same, really, players. Apart from Pelly tried to sign me about 20 times before the season started, but that's another story. Again, we won the League Cup, we beat Cove, we won the Aberdeenshire Cup, we beat Vale. So we're still winning leagues and winning cups and all. But that was a year I felt that, I say I fell off a reef, I was pulled off, a forklift let go or something, and I was left on top of Wahid hanging by my right ankle again. So I missed 15 games because of that. But again, we won the league by 16 points to Cove. And I managed to get 28 goals, 32 games. So the next year, Dougie's still the manager. We won a qualifying cup against Elgin. And then it was a pretty poor year. We only won the league by 7 points this year. The Keith, it was. I think that was a game later on. We played you, Thainer, and we won 2-1, I think. Maybe that was
there was one year you beat us 2-1, but I think the year that you won it by 7, I think we were kind of chasing you, but you were 4 ahead, and we played you on the last day. And you,
I think it was.
you came in, Yateser, the aforementioned Yateser, and a couple of them came in a helicopter or something.
I did that in a Scottish Cup game. I can't.
Anyway,
Again, 1996. I got 39 goals and 38 starts. So that was a good year for me now. But then it comes on to the 5th year, and that's where it gets a bit trickier. We're an absolute disaster at start. I mean, the first 8 games, we won 3, we lost 3, and we drew 2. Now this is fun. Forbes Shan, the chairman, has stepped down at this point. Mike Hendry, who's taken over as chairman. Now he made a huge call here after that 8 games because we got knocked out the qualifying cup with Peterhead and Dougie Rugby was sacked. And it was a huge thing to do, but I believe if he hadn't done it, we wouldn't have won. Because he brought in Phil Bonnyman, who maybe none of you know, and none of us knew him. Mike Hendry, he was a coach at somewhere in England, I don't mind exactly, but absolute revelation guy. I mean, he just came in. The first training session, I mind because I was injured, started at 7, they were still training at 10 o'clock at night. And he had like a full-time mentality. He couldn't understand how you are needing to go home because you've been working all day like that. His training and coaching was by miles the best that I've ever seen. And I learnt more for him than I would learn for anybody else put together. And he was absolutely fantastic as a manager. And I mean, I couldn't stop scoring for him. I scored 34 goals in the first 24 games. And the last game I played was in January the 7th because I hurt my back. And what transpired, I needed a back operation in the summer of 98. But that was the end of my season. And we was miles behind Fraserburgh for a while. And I remember Phil Bonnyman says to me, why does the manager of Fraserburgh keep getting in the paper saying we are not going to win this league, we are not good enough, we'll blow us? And that's what Charlie was doing. And Phil Bonnyman couldn't understand that. He says the players are bound to be starting to think the same. And it transpired, that's what happened. I mean, 4 games to go, Huntly were still behind them, and there was a game at Belsley. And I couldn't go and watch. It was just hopeless watching. And, well, you had Bill on the other week, Bill McAllister. Obviously, at the time, I didn't have a phone or anything. And you're sitting listening for Bill's report at half-time, 0-0. And then you're sitting waiting for a report at night, 0-0. So that's me. Oh, we've blown it, Ken. And then we got up to Brora the week after. We won 2-1. Colin McDonald scored 10 minutes for the end of the later. And we get on the bus again. Bizarrely, you didn't kind of score for Fraserburgh. I don't care why, nobody knew at that time. You're on the bus and you hear it. Forest beat Fraserburgh. So that was us back in the driving seat. We played Elgin City, a tough game, 2-1. And then we're ahead by 2 points, I think, and we have to play for William to win this 5 in a row. We win the game 4-0, and that's it. But it's a funny thing to say because I only played to January, although I scored 34 goals. It was like I didn't feel part of it that I came just because I hadn't been playing and can you're nail on the pitch, and it just felt a bit funny to me. But I mean, from the bus journey home, it was the best bus journey I've ever been on. It was just fantastic. And probably, again, I never realised the enormity of it just had happened. You now realise it now, looking back. I mean, the Highland League's been going however many years, and it's never been done. And I mean, it's easy to say, we've had it thrown at us when it was happening. Huntly bought the league. Well, I'll just tell you this, 8 players, Huntly won 5 championships, plus Willie Lawson as manager, assistant manager. 7 of that players were free. Craig Yates is the only player Huntly paid money for of that 8. And yes, Huntly got, the players were very well paid as regards signing on fees, but the big games brought in the big money, and the money was reinvested in the players. Huntley bought players that, like Stevie Lennox, Brian Thompson. They paid £5,000 for Brian Thompson. I'm sure other Highland League clubs could have been buying him. And but it was it's a bit of them against us type thing. There's Huntley bought a league, Huntley play a long ball. A bit of, I suppose, a bit of jealousy, but I mean, it was just fantastic times, I can go. I've been on holiday twice. I've been on a cruise, and twice somebody's come up to me, a boy from Inverurie, and once a boy from Banff, and they must have maybe recognise you and you hear you speaking and in their end, oh, did you play for Huntley? So Highland League fit, but not just Huntley. It's a great conversation starter. Wherever you are, if you go and play a golf out in somebody will say, you play for Huntley? Oh, my mate used to play for Huntley. You ken him, Ken? It's a great thing, the Highland League, and it's been a big part of my life, and it's obviously successful, but it was just a great time.
Brilliant, man. Wonderful stories, and thank you for that. Here's a question for all three of you. All four of you, in fact. What's the connection between Huntley Football Club, the creator of Only Fools and Horses, and a legendary top flat race jockey?
Mike Rogers.
Correct, Martin got it in one.
Oh,
Absolutely. And you
Physio.
was on about injuries, you can't, Ian. He was never injured. That's the greatest physio you've ever seen. He was just never injured.
I remember meeting him. I never worked with him, obviously, but I remember
What a
meeting him.
guy. Well, he was at Fulham, Barks and George Best, Rodney Marsh and him. But I mean, I would take some of his stories with a pinch of salt. I think a lot of them are made up, but he's no longer with us. But I mean, he was with John Teasdale at Elgin for a start, and he come to with Pele. Absolutely great guy. And Frankie Dettori, he was his. Well, to be fair, my testimonial, I give him a shout because my wife's in-laws were friendly with him, and he set up all this Dettori stuff, the Godolphin Silks and everything, our signed and everything. So, he was a great guy and a big part of Huntley's success in the early years.
He was also the personal physio to John Sullivan, the creator of Only Fools and Horses. That was the other line, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the other Martin.
Well, that was certainly very tenuous, Dave. That stumped me, that's for sure. Ian, defenders.
Defenders. Just before I got to defenders, Martin, it'd be remiss of me not to pay tribute to that team. I said it the last time we were on, and I've had the conversation with you, I think, at a personal level since then. I pardon the pun, but I don't buy that thing about Huntley bought the league. I didn't go with it at the time, and I never have. The reason being, even if you had paid money for those guys, and I know you didn't, and you paid them good money and everything else, you bought quality. You bought,
Yep.
you know what I mean? So I think in any level of football, if you're going to invest, big money or whatever money, if you're buying quality, and people said that, I think, about Greg Carroll. He said, oh, at the Vale he got money and he won the league. But he went and bought Ian Murray and Mike McKenzie. You know what I mean? At their peak. So therefore, whether you spent money or not, you had quality. And again, going back to that piece about long ball, you could play it because John was so accurate.
Yeah.
Butler was there and you were there and Brian was off it. But you also had guys in the middle of the park who could play. Yates and Lennox and Eddie, and then you had Steph Gray, God rest him, and DeBarris and Darcy in there. Why would you miss them out? You wouldn't. There was a time and a place to do it. You were massively effective, and we got some right doings. We beat you once or twice. That was probably about all. You talk about and I'll digress quickly because this links us into the defenders, believe it or not, Martin and Dave. But the penalty shootout we had against you at, I think that was the first year you won the league, was that, or the second year? It was a bit early on anyway.
Second year.
And it went to penalties, guys. It was a 1-1 draw. And to be fair, Martin, you'd battered us. I remember you'd hit my crossbar about 7 times or whatever. But anyway, it went to extra time. It was 0-0. Luggies scored a free kick and Kevin Will went straight up the park to equalise. So it went to penalty kicks. John Gardner saved one for Neil Gibson. We were talking about Gibby earlier there, and Gibby's one of my best pals. And then John, as you say, a good striker of the ball, scored the winner. So Huntley had scored all 5, and we didn't take our last one. And we're out in Keith that night. We had a couple of beers, and the fans were, they realised that we'd, given it our best shot. We were all disappointed, etc. and Gibby and I were having a drink, and one of the fans said, "Oh," kind of spoke to Gibby, and he said, "Listen, don't you be worrying about missing the penalty," and you know, he was going into this in some detail. Now, for anyone that knows Neil Gibson, I think we all do around the place, there's not a lot puts Gibby up nor down. He was disappointed at the end of us. But anyway, by the end of this conversation, I could see Gibby looking a bit incredulous at this guy, thinking, why is this guy giving me a lot of sympathy? So he waited till the guy had finished with his, you know, genuinely heartfelt sympathy that Gibby was the sole misser of a penalty kick. And he said, I don't know what you're bothered about. He says, he pointed to me and he went, "He let in 5. Give me a point, you know. I had 5 chances to save one. He only had 1 chance to score one. So in Gibby's eyes, it wasn't really anything to do with him at all.
Yep. Yep.
Anyway,
Did he say the same about the qualifying cup final at Borough Briggs?
There was one half of that. That was another qualifying cup final. That was Borough Briggs as well. This is another one when he was short with the pass back, about 40 yards short. There was one spell at Borough Briggs that we didn't play him in the right-hand goal because that was when he had all his nightmares. He still tells me that in 400 games he never made a mistake, but I don't know. Yeah, defenders again. I'll, you know, as I've said already, guys, I'm not included any Keith players in my select, but I do have a lot I could pay tribute to. When I went to Keith at first, Iain Mackay, I was cup tie at the start of the week and following the sad passing of Alec Rutherford. And Iain Mackay was a captain when I went to Keith, one of the best fullbacks I've seen in my time in the Highland League, and then went back in and played at sweeper for a spell as well. When Davy Wilson came in at right back, and I played with Davy at the Vale and at Paul Wisely. In fact, we think he stays up at Huntly now, Martin. And just
I was playing golf with him 2 weeks ago. He's absolutely hopeless at golf, but what a laugh.
Thankfully, he was better at football. You know, it was dinky. There was, when I was at Keith, you know, Alan Forbes, Big Forbies, his laddies at a Vale now, Liam, Big Forbies, I played with at Vale and at Keith. Ian Matheson, fantastic pro. Keith Watt and Dodge Simmers played in our league winning side, were probably 2 of the most underrated defenders in my time anyway. And the aforementioned Neil Gibson, who, if I was going to put a Keith player in the squad, I would put Neil Gibson in. 1, because maybe he would get in, and 2, because I can't be bothered listening to him moaning for the next 20 years that I didn't put him in. But those are some of the guys that I had the pleasure of playing behind. In terms of defenders, looking back over the years, you know, you look, and I go back, I mean, Dave, I touched on Billy McDonald initially there with my goalkeepers. And in the early days of my time, the Cali back 4, you had Roddy Davidson, Bob Summers, Peter Corbett and Kevin Mann. Now, these guys Cali were a big side physically, but these guys could all play. I mean, Roddy and Kevin were the fullbacks, and they were both built like centre-halves, you know. Then you were up the hill, you know, at the Jags, Billy Skinner, Wad was a flying machine. Still looks exactly the same now as he did then. Davy Milroy, who I enjoyed listening to the other week there. And Alan Stevenson. Alan Stevenson was a winger at Clach and then got converted into probably one of the best left backs along with Kevin Mann, you know, at that sort of time. Mikey Andrews as well, big Mikey, chunky Andrews, played at the back with the Jags and then went to Cali. Ross County, the great county side that came through. Big Johnson Belshaw couldn't get a game at Cali, but became a league winner at County. Chris Somerville was probably one of the first wing backs, really, a full back that became a wing back. I look at the Elgin City sides. Chico McHardy, big Chico was Chico, but you know, Chico probably had a bit more football about him than people maybe gave him credit for, you know. And a guy, I don't even remember, there was a guy, Willie Furphy, United, and he came up. What a player he was! What a player he was! He played at sweeper with Elgin City, and your own sides, Martin. You know, I look at guys like Kevin Walker, Arthur Murphy, Rugby, of course, himself, you know. And then on the coast, you go up to Buchan, Big John Sivright. I mean, 20 years, Martin, at Peterhead. The longest legs in the world. I mean, Sivy was a gentleman, but boy, he could look after himself. And the core players that come in, you know, Davy White, fullback. Dave Moreland and Andy Patterson, who played at Huntly and at Cove, Mark Simpson, had the pleasure of a season with Simi at Loki. Stevie King, you know, had a great career, testimony like Peterhead. Russell McBride, who was still playing when he was about 60. Played all over the place, but again, you know, could read the game like a book as far as I was concerned. And also guys like, you know, the current Devon Vale manager, Stevie Dolan, phenomenal career, you know. It's difficult. I've reeled off some names there. I noted them all down the last 2 or 3 days, Martin, since you gave me this impossible task. And I'm sure there's people when they watch this will be thinking, oh, what about this and what about them? And I've actually...
Well, Ian, I'll just interrupt you there. That's a great thing about this. You're reeling off names. I'll just touch on the football memories thing. This is fantastic. You know, you mentioned Willie Furphy. Didn't disrespect to well, I'd forgotten the man existed. And you're right. You know,
well,
I suddenly got...
Man, if I could just say Willie Furphy, when I seen the Indian, he's a name I thought he was an absolutely fantastic player at Elgin. I think he went to Ross County, you know, did he, Ian?
He might have.
I think when they went into Scottish League, he was a fantastic defender.
So the point I'm making is, you know, it's fantastic that you're qualifying your decision, whether it's right or wrong. That remains to be seen. But you know, great that you're reeling all these names off. You know, Dave will be sitting there, I'm sure, quite sure, thinking, my God, of course, how the hell is he going to pick a buck?
There's a fraction. It's probably a fraction of them as well.
Yeah.
I mean, Darcy would probably have another list. Martin would have another list. You know, Dave, Martin, you guys all would. You know, and there were, you know, Willie Furphy and these guys could really play. You know, and that goes. I'll mention John Teasdale later. But, you know, John Teasdale had an eye for a player. I'm pretty sure it was John that took him to Elgin City. I think it was him that took him up to the Highland League.
Yeah, it was.
When I weighed everything up, I've bottled it a little bit because to give me an extra option further forward, I've gone with 3 defenders, but one of them could have played in at least 2 positions, and I've gone with Davy Milroy as a centre half. I mean, 22 years at the Jags. I played against Davy a lot of those years, and I would imagine if you were a Jags fan or a Jags manager, a Jags coach, or a Jags teammate, you could tick the box with Davy Milroy every single week. You know, I just said Davy Milroy was a 7 or 8 out of 10. And I certainly see Dave. I saw him obviously on your programme a couple of weeks ago. I bumped into him a couple of times at Cali Stadium. Lovely big guy. Still looks exactly the same as he did 40 years ago. I don't know if that means that he hasn't aged or if it means that he looked this old 40 years ago. I've gone with Davy Milroy. And to the right-hand side of Davy Milroy, I've got Dave Moreland. And to the left-hand side of Davy Milroy, I've got Kevin Mann. So I've gone with a back 3 because I've bottled out putting someone else in because I can give me another option further forward. But that's my 3 defenders: Davy Moreland, Davy Milroy, and Kevin Mann. And again, you know, astonishing to think the people you're leaving out. Bob Summers, just to digress, Bob Summers has got 33 winners' medals. 6 as a manager and 27 as a player. That's nearly as many as you, Martin. But you know what I mean? Obviously, joking aside, to you guys, I mean, that's phenomenal, isn't it? You know? And Kevin and Wilson Robertson were up the road with him for so many weeks. So difficult to leave out people like that, you know. But that's my back 3: Dave Moreland, Dave Milroy, Kevin Mann.
Yeah, that's a formidable back 3, I have to say.
You only need 3. You only need 3 if it's those 3.
Well, that's maybe something of what you say. We'll look forward to hearing your midfield choices in a wee while. Dave, over to you.
Yeah, and you talk about Kevin Mann and Bob Summers and Wilson Robertson. Anytime I'm at Locos, all 3 of them are there watching Locos. They're still very much involved and very, very keen in Highland League football. And that's great to see from 3 such legends, Thain.
No, it is. Well, Wilson's laddie, Sam, he's at Bucky now. Sam Robertson, he's at Bucky, and Kevin's there a bit less now because Kevin's retired. He retired, I think, at 55. So I think he's spending more time in his place in Spain. Anytime he's back, though, he joins Bob and Wilson. But you're right, for fact, there was one day, believe it or not, I was at the Locos and there was 4 of them there because Billy Urquhart had joined them as well. But, about whom more later.
You mentioned Kevin and his house in Spain. We're going to go to somewhere warmer with Mr. Darcy, of course. We're going to go across to Australia. Your football career in Australia, it lasted basically a decade, Darcy. But let's look at the first 5 years.
First 5 years, yeah. Look, I arrived in Sydney 6:30 in the morning at 2nd of March 2004. Week in Sydney, and then I flew down to Melbourne and caught with Grant Cool, former teammate of Thainer's, ex-Rothie, and Keith. He was living in Melbourne at the time. Stayed with him for a week, and then hired a car. So I was just told that find this place called Griffith. It was just north of Melbourne, or so I thought. So I hired a car in South Yarra. I went back to Coolies, picked my stuff up. 6.5 hours later in the car, I find myself pulling up into this. Oh, it was a 4.5 hour drive, but Cooley lived the south side of Melbourne on the beach. So by the time I got through Melbourne, I was a bit of a shambles. So straight into, I met a guy, Tony Catanzariti, who I'm still very close with. Tony and his wife Maria were like my adopted parents when I went out there. They're my Australian mum and dad. So we went out. Sorry, I met him in a car park. Now I've been speaking to this guy on the phone for the best part of 3 months. 4 months maybe, and I didn't have a clue what he looked like. So there's me, sunburnt, walking about his car park, and I see this little short guy come out, and I thought, wonder if that's him. And then as soon as he spoke, it was him. So up to his house, met his family, had a bite to eat, and then our training session. So I had a plate of pasta. I'm down to training, and it was probably, I think, it was 38 degrees. So we've done the first. The warm up was a lapa, very neighbours-ish, an oval. Kalina oval it was called. The very Italian. The Kalina spelled the same way as Kalina spells his name, referee. But anyway, so it was. I measured it later. It was 1.3 Ks, and the warm up was 3 laps, and it was a half crescent, also a circular, but it was uphill along the bottom and then back uphill, and also down the other side, and it just 3 laps of that just killed me. But that sort of, I didn't want to beat the front, I didn't want to beat the back, so I sort of stuck in the middle. So I was sort of toddling along in the middle, and this boy came round, and this boy Mooney, these guys were Italian. This boy he was very, very Australian, so to speak. So he's took off and he's caught up with the guys in front of us. I'm thinking, Jesus, but anyway, he's still a personal trainer, fit guy. So that was the first couple of sessions in, and then Stewart, Vance, and Grant Davidson, as I said, I touched on earlier, from Fort William and Clachnacudden. Grant lived in Skye and Stewart was from Fort William. But they came across, so they threw us in a house together. I was there first. I was there for about 3 weeks myself first, so I got choice the best bedroom and got used to the car, and it was just it was just a way of life. I met my first wife the first day in town, and then I went downhill. But no, joking aside, it was the time in Australia, which I'll touch on more later on, was the highs very high and lows very low, and she was very supportive in basically keeping me there, and it was something that at that time felt very right. So Stewart and that came out. We were interviewed by local television, back page of the paper. We played in a Northeast Soccer League, it was called, and it was based in Victoria. So we're based in New South Wales. First game of the season was away to a place called Cobram. So we get there, and I'm like, really? And I was like, big cricket crease in the middle of the pitch. So it was just touching on it, it was an oval again. So we beat them 9-1. It took Grant ended up finishing top scorer that season, but it took Grant about 4 games to score. I'm not sure if he liked the heat a lot, but big Grant, he come on to a bad, as I said, a good season that season. So with first game of the season at home, we scored late on to 2-1. An Aaron Sergi strike, put in the top bin, and we beat Shep South Shepperton South, which was Shepperton where the league was based. We beat them 2-1. Now, unbeknownst to me, that was going to be that sort of kick-start the season. So we've went on. We played a local derby. Now, being Ugali was a predominantly the guys that are on the club were Northern Italian. So you had a guy like Santi Donadel was a coach, and Adrian Fanani was still involved. Now these guys played for the club, but they were, I think they've just all turned 50 this year, so they're 5-6 years older than me. They finished up playing, but they were now sort of running the club. So we're out. So it was another being Italian. There was two clubs. So it was Ugali and Hamwood. So the local derby. So the first local derby, big thing in the paper on the Friday. There was television adverts for the commercials for the game during the week. There was a bit in the telly on the Friday night. Fireworks before the game, and I was about, I think, if memory serves me right, it's about 800-900 people at this game. So anyway, we're up. I think we're up 1-0, and a corner was pinged into the box. It's defending. Now this boy run. I was sitting just on sort of halfway. The ball comes out. I takes a touch, beats the ball, and the guy catches me neck high. So I gets up, and instead I went up and I grabbed him, and instead of sticking the head in him, I actually kissed him. So this showed disrespect to the whole Italian community, and I was getting threatened. There was a call from the press asking me to comment on it. I never said anything. So anyway, we beat them. I think we beat them 4-1 that night. So towards the end of the season, we'd run away. We'd won the league by 17 points. But it goes down to, if you win it, that's the flag sitting in the background. If you win the flag, it means hee-haw, really. You've got to go through this final. So good teams win leagues and lucky teams win cups. That's what I've always thought. But your season was based on getting into that top 4 position. So first played second, and third played fourth. So the winner of third and fourth played the loser of first and second to go at the final. So we got beaten the first game 2-1. Now there was about 10 minutes to go. I've come back from injury, came on, and the guy that I kissed, his uncle played. Now he played in Belgium. He played for a couple of clubs. He played in the A-League for, it was the NSL. It was National Soccer League in Australia at the time. Played for Canberra, and he thought he was Billy Big Time. So he's come on, and I'll be for a few run-ins. So he wouldn't shake my hand after the game. So I've pushed him. He's pushed me. I'm getting held back. The guy who I kissed, there was a pitch invasion. The guy who I kissed came on. His father punched me in the side of the head, and I'm like, nah, I've really got to get out of here. So, well, back this was their home ground, back into their club afterwards. I said, I'm going for a drink. I've got nothing. So, cut a long story short, we played the semi-final. We played the second semi. We forgot getting beat. We're down 2-0 with 10 minutes to go. We come back with a 2-2 draw, extra time. We beat them extra time, and then we played Hamwood in the final. So it was all about us and them. And I just felt, look, be it mentally fit or not, as I touched on with old Flash, I wasn't feeling it. I didn't say anything. In the games that I passed me by, I think I was concentrating on other things. We got beat 4-1 that day, and that was just that was the end of the first season. But I just felt that because we finished the top league by 17, 18 points, and it comes down to something like this. But that was just the way the whole setup was. So that season as well, there was Scotty Moore, Forest Mechanics. He was out. And Chris Mboke, big Chris, he's played for Dice Juniors, so they were out. So we played in the select team with them. We played down in Shepperton against other boys, and then the third season there, I was coming back from injury again. Taped up my ankle. Now you could play for the reserve team, played before the first team. So I'm broken ankle. Strapped up ankle. And I've come on last 10 minutes, and this boy just sort of came in from nowhere. I was no one's fault. I was keeping the ball going across the park, being a dick, but the guys came in and fractured, a spinal fracture, broke my tib and fib, and that was me finished for the best part of the year. So we then qualified for the finals. We finished second that year. We got beat in the first game again. We got through the second chance. We played, I think it was Hanwood we played. Shep United, Shep South we played, and then we went through the final. So we're down the final. I was sitting on the bench, but I wasn't on the bench. I was in crutches. Now this game it's quite synonymous with my career down there, because we drew 1-1. The game went to penalties. We got beat on pens, but on the Monday coming back up the road with Mad Monday, every after the season finished, everyone took Monday off work. You meet at the club for a couple of beers. There'll be a barbie, and depending how your day, just an end of season celebration on the Monday. It was called Mad Monday. We got a call saying that one of the Shepperton players had been substituted and then taken a penalty. The referee never noticed. So there was a big hoo-ha. This actually went to Football Victoria, who backed us up, and then the FF, the Football Federation Australia, they bottled it. So I think they got a legal team and that involved. So this was around about the time before Facebook and what have you. But there was a wee social platform called Bebo. So Darcy went to Bebo. Darcy took it to task and slated the team that beat us. Their manager has got more face than Big Ben. Later on that week, I received a letter from the solicitor asking me to remove the comment or he's got suing for defamation of character. So needless to say, he asked for an apology as well. I gave him a couple of words of apology, but yeah. So that was the footballing side. But when we got there, the guy I touched on, the guy Mooney I touched on, anyone you speak to that was out of the club, I mean, the guys who've been in the club will rattle off later on. True Aussie bloke, he in a dressing room, he came out and he's flipping through his photo album. And I'm looking, I said, there's Woody Harrelson, Sean Penn, and there's him. I thought, and then he said, oh, I was in the Thin Red Line. I said, eh? He said, yeah, I was in the Thin Red Line. He was actually an extra on the Thin Red Line. And because the director liked the look of his face, like the chip tooth, like look at his face, he got me a few facials. That doesn't sound right. But, he's actually watching the movie. Yeah, you can actually pick him out, and he always comes out. Any new boys coming in, be it from Scotland, or with a couple of Italian guys and a couple of English guys come in during my time there. This photo album would always appear, and it would always be him with Woody Harrelson. But he'd be we'd stop the bus and go back into Griffith, and he'd jump on top of the roof and he'd surf in the roof back to the club. And he was just, to put it in no finer terms, he wasn't wired upright, but he's still one of my good pals out there. And look, that was sort of the first 5 years summed up. A lot of good times. With Grant and Stewart. Stewart moved on. Then Stevie Crombie, ex-Keith Crombie, was a wee spell at Huntley and Cove. Stevie Crombie came out with a guy Ryan Spencer. Stevie's still there. And I play golf with Stevie's brother, Keith here. So I've still got that connection with there as well. But yeah, look, it was a great time in my life, apart from the leg break, which kept me out for a year. The Sunday that we played on a Sunday. The Sunday I was getting my first game back. Boys were short. We were going to play. I wasn't finished. The wife's like, "No, you're not playing." So it's fine. So I was golfing in the morning. So we're short. Can you help us out? I said, "I'll help you out." So I went out and I got home. Couldn't find my boots. So I've turned the house upside down looking for my boots. And I phoned the ex-wife and she's like, "I'm not going to tell you. You're not getting your boots." I said, "Look, you better fucking tell me. Where's my boots?" So to cut a long story short, she hid them in a thing like an esky, a cool box, which was hidden on the back cupboards of the garage. So I got my boots and made my comeback that day, and I training on Tuesday night, and I forgot about the leg break, and that was me for my first 5 years. So yeah, as we can say, the highs very high and the lows were very low, be it from a football point of view and a personal point of view. But it was a great experience. Great experience.
Oh, thank you for that. That was an amazing monologue. That was unbelievable.
Did I breathe?
No, really. Martin, I've got a suggestion for our theme tune at the beginning of this episode. I think you should dump that wonderful music you've got and you should put on the Hot Chocolate, all-time favourite, It Started With a Kiss.
Yep. You put your hand in your pocket and pay the royalty, Daves. I'll do that for sure. Martin, I'm not going to ask you to speak about 5 years. I'm going to want you to speak about one season, 94-95. That was quite a season. Enlighten the viewers.
Maybe if I could go back to the 5 in a row, I should have. It's a pretty amazing start at, and Huntly, in this 5 years we won the league, Huntly played 154 games. They won 123, they drew 15, and they lost 16 matches in 5 years. We averaged more than 3 goals a game, and we was letting in less than 1 a game for 5 years.
It's so remarkable. Now, we're not going to get involved in a debate about the pyramid system, right?
No.
But you know, that should never happen again. It will never happen again because, you know, if clubs progress by winning the league, not necessarily winning the playoffs, but if you know, over the course of winning the league twice, 2 in a row or three in a row, you would imagine teams will then progress to the Scottish League. So I don't think we'll ever see the likes of that again. It's a remarkable record, Martin.
I'm very proud to be part of it. But you speak about 1994, right? 94-95, Huntly signed Stevie Gray, which was a huge thing for Huntly because that gave Huntly, I thought, the best front six would have. Stevie Gray played in the right wing, Marco played in the left, Stevie Lennox was a playmaker, Brian Thompson played attacking midfielder, and me and White played up front. So I think that was the most exciting time for Huntly that year. And Stevie Gray was way too good to be playing in the Highland League. The talent he had, he should just never have been in playing for Huntly. I mean, I could digress a wee bit. He signed for Huntly, and then Huntly made a mistake by giving him his signing on fee. So he disappeared. So he earned the nickname Lord Looking by the fans in the Howland Shed. Yeah? But an amazing guy he was. I mean, he had a girlfriend, and every week he would tell her, she would say, "Where are you playing today?" It was either away to Fort William, away to Brora, or away to Wick. She must have thought I was only 4 teams in the league. And Huntly was away every week, because I want to be back till 2 o'clock. Yeah? That's digressing a bit. I mean, again, we won the Qualifying Cup against Keith, as I said, won a thing. But it was a Scottish Cup, but it's a big year for me, as you say. The first game, it was touched on the last time, Thane got injured, and it was 2-2. I mean, Huntly was 2-0 up. If I mind right, there's 2 crosses come in, and Keith goalie just stuck in his line.
Told you, Andy Lavelle should have stayed in goal for the start.
Sorry, Thain, I couldn't resist. But obviously, that game 2-0, and Thain was off, and as he said, Andy Lavelle went in, and I think Maver pulled him back, and the guy Neil Thompson scored a late equaliser. So it went to the replay, and for the first time ever in my career, Pelly took me aside before the game, and he says, because I had been injured, he says, "I'm thinking of leaving you out, Ken." And that was the first time it ever happened to me. And I says, "Well, whatever you think, Ken." But then it come to picking the team on the Saturday, and whether he just helped me out to maybe buck my ideas up or so. We won 3-1 anyway. I scored a goal. And we got the next round, we're playing Burnt Island. And you're on about the Huntly pitch. If ever there was a pitch unplayable, it was that day. And I'll tell you this, the night before, I was probably about 9 inches of snow in Huntly on the Friday. And again, for the first time in my career and the only time in my career, my mate was saying a bit of a party at his house. So I would go to this party and have a few beers because there's no way the game was on. Get up in the morning and there's a tractor on the pitch with a bogey full of sand. There was about 50 folk in the pitch, clearing the snow off the pitch. Game on. Oh dear. So, I mean, we won the game 7-0 and I scored a hat-trick, so I maybe should have tried it. I maybe should have tried it more often. And that got us the plum tie with Dran Dundee United, the holders of the Scottish Cup, the team I support at Huntly. Turned out a huge game. Obviously, the weeks preceding it, the media is there and getting interviewed, and the tunes just are up for the game. Big crowd. Said 4,500, but there was more than that. I mean, there was talk of Dundee United fans forging tickets. I mean, back in that day, Forbes wouldn't have forked out money. It's been a bit of paper with the thing. So there was far too much in the Dundee United end. The barrier collapsed at half time, although we didn't see it. I just seen it after. Of course, Jim McLean was out again, getting somebody else out. It wasn't me this time. You see him standing there. Again. We lost the game 3-1. Luckily, I scored the goal. And again, luckily, for some reason, I was the top scorer in the Scottish Cup that year with 5 goals. A lovely plaque and £1,000. And it's not as impressive as it sounds when you hear I scored a goal against Keith, 3 against Burnt Island and 1 against Dundee United. But 5 goals was enough to win it that year. And I mean, I'm not sure, maybe, I can you boys maybe can if somebody else with the Highland League's ever won it. I don't know.
That's an interesting point, Martin, because I think there has been guys who were entitled to win it, but I believe controversially, I think there's a year, now I can't tell you who the Highland League player was, but Ali McCoist got the top goal scorer, but apparently it only counted for the 3rd round onwards.
Oh, I think I see something.
That's definitely one we'll maybe dig a wee bit deeper, Dave, and see if we can find, because that's a pretty controversial sort of scenario that somebody scored more goals than McCoist actually got the
that would have been earlier rooms and that, so it's preceding.
And I think there was a sponsorship deal that year. I think there was a holiday involved. So
because it used to be you got 500 note for a hat trick, because in that Burnt Island game, Whiter and me was like hat trick will split the money, but they must have stopped it that year, so
I think in a similar vein, that the Highland League player did win goal of the season one year, and it was the 3rd goal at Capello in a 4-3 defeat for Devon Vale, and it was Big Dougal, Brian Dugonsky, hit this volley for about 35 yards. The Morton goalie's still looking for it, and I think that was quite an accolade for Dugonsky that day.
I think Burnt Island also hold another unique record. You'll remember this, Ian. There was a time that there was a penalty deduction from the sponsor money in each round if you had a booking, and it was twice the size if you had a sending off. And I'm pretty sure Burnt Island hold a record because after a particular game, they ended up owing the SFA money. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that is the case.
Aye.
Sorry, Martin.
If I go back there, I won a plaque and £1,000. I was a big due to get it, and Forbes just said, I'll just pick it up. So Forbes went to the do. I mean, I wasn't worried here or there, but so Forbes picked it up for me. I didn't even go to the thing. I mean, that's a bit, although it's on closer inspection, it's not impressive, but it's still something I can say I've been a top scorer in the Scottish Cup. Okay?
Absolutely.
Also, the other thing in that was a Highland League select that year. End of the season, we played the English unit St Albans. Pelly was leaving to go to Carly. He was the manager. I mean, he picked, I think there was 8 Huntly players, but we won the game. We went down there, flew down in the Friday morning, and the game was at Friday night. It was 3-1 down, and we won 4-3. Brian Thompson scored, Craig Yates scored, Ian Stewart scored a penalty, and I scored the winner, 4-3. So they've got the flower of Scotland nothing in the dressing room and all that. So we're back to the hotel. Now, Dave, you'll ken your man Alan Scott for the P&J. Tremlett was there and all, but mainly Alan Scott. And then he had a big spiel, so proud now. Free bar for an hour, yeah. So everybody's there getting wired in, and it's about 5 minutes to go for the hour. And Pele, the shark he is, he stands up and he's starting making a speech saying how good great Alan Scott was, and there's only singing one Alan Scott, and then he loved it. And the long and short of it was about 4 or 5 hours later, still a free bar. Yeah. So that was a Friday night. So the Saturday was the FA Cup final, and you could get tickets to go to the Cup final. They would sort it out for us. It was Man United against Everton because Everton won 1-0. But the sensible boys went to the Cup final. And I say the sensible boys, Evan Well, Yugi Rugby. That was the end of it. And some of the Blazers went to the thing. The rest of the boys all day in the session. Ken. We end up back at the hotel at night. And Pele says, oh, just sign Tremlett's name for a drink. So for the rest of the night, everybody's at the bar. Mike Tremlett, room for whatever he was. And I think it must have been hundreds of pounds anyway at the end. And says Tremlett had gotten the bill, so he wasn't a happy chappy in the morning, Ken, but that's things that go on. But for all else, I reckon if one of y'all mind, a guy, Andy Mackay, he played for Brora Rangers. Played in the wing.
A winger.
What a guy. He was there, right? And Friday night, he arrived back, he sat down in this seat. Well, he never moved for that seat till we left on Sunday afternoon. He wasn't in his bed, the hail, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What a guy, man. I think the far north you go, the more drink you can handle. Never move for the seat. So that, I mean, it was a great end to the season, but it was a great end for Pele in the Highland League. That was him off to Carly, and that was a great thing for him. And that was 94, 95 for him, Martin.
Yep, that was quite a year indeed.
Yeah, I mean, it's good.
Lot of great memories. Dave, back to yourself.
Yeah, Martin, before all this is over, we've heard so much about him, we'll just have to do our best, dig deep, and see if we can get Pele in our show. It'd be wonderful if we could do it before the end of this thing, whatever it is.
I'll just watch this space.
He's he's did a podcast, he's doing another, and I think he's available for it.
Just watch this space. Just watch this space.
You'll hit a tell to put his teeth in. So.
Iain, midfield.
Midfielders. Again, guys, looking at some of the guys I played with at Keith, my first year at Keith, Martin, you're talking about Dundee United there, your team obviously. I was lucky enough to play a season with Hamish French before he went to Dundee United. And I don't know if you remember, but Hamish had the chance to sign for Jim McLean. He knocked it back. And then a year later, that's before I was at Keith, and then a year later, he did actually sign. But the day after, he decided he wasn't sure. So Jim McLean was decent enough just to rip up the forms. And then at the third time, the end of the third year, by which time I'd fortunately had a season playing with Hamish. I think he obviously realised when they were signing boys like me, it was time to get out. But Hamish did go. But Hamish was a fantastic player. We used to talk about his big toe. Hamish, it looked as though the ball was away from him, and it's just the toe would just get away from somebody, and he just had the smile on his face. He had great balance, and unfortunately, I think he had a man of the match debut for United at Ibrox, and then he had a freak injury on the Monday at training and broke a bone in his leg, and he never quite made the impact that he might have. But I saw him at the Centenary a few years ago. He was back up, still exactly the same lad. But
great player. I obviously stay in Methlick.
Of course.
So our local paper shop is run by the French family, and I actually saw Donald cutting the grass, doing a bit for the community last night, and he had a sweatshirt on. I says to my wife, "Aye, Dunfermline United flog."
I can imagine. I think I don't know if is he still involved at Dunfermline? I know he was.
I'm not entirely sure. It was a while since I saw him. His nephew Sam
Oh, aye.
Actually played for Martin. Actually had trials with Peterhead. He's an officer in the army now.
Oh, is he? I
So,
remember him. I remember him.
He's done a really good player, a good, decent player.
I know, I did. I saw him a couple of times. Yeah, no, so a season with Frenchie, who was, you know, right up there, playing an experienced side. You know, you're talking 86, 87. Andy Fettis, we spell Andy at Huntly. Obviously, Martin. Andy Fettis was eccentric, but I'll tell you what, if you ever wanted someone in the trenches with you, Andy Fettis was your man. Andy was hard as nails, but boy, he could play. Jed Wallace as well. Jed sadly not keeping the best of health at the minute, but Jed, for a big guy, had brilliant feet. He had a great touch. Scotty Brown and Craig Yates were coming through as youngsters. Neil Cowie, way back when the League Cup in '88. Neil Cowie got a couple of goals in the final against Cali, and the other one that's right up there, and I'll come back to him again a bit later, was Darren Still, obviously, who was a fantastic captain for us and one of the biggest, probably single influences in our team that I've seen, you know. So those were some of the guys that, you know, that I had the pleasure of playing with. In terms of guys that I looked at, again, I talked earlier there about the physicality of Cali, which I would emphasise all these guys could play. You know, they weren't just big heifers or anything. And I mean, in their midfield, we had Martin Lyall and the late great Alan Hercher, another who was taken far too soon a couple of years ago, I think at the age of 52. But Martin Lyall and Hercher, I remember, you know, playing against these guys, and at corners against you, when corners came in, it was like the lights went out, because there was Urquhart and there was Ray McIntosh at one stage, and there was Hercher and Lyall and Roddy Davidson and Bob Summers and Kevin Mann. You know, but they knew what they were doing. They had movement, they had strength, they had so much. Two wonderful players. Another one that played in there that was a completely different type of player was John Docherty. And Doc was at Cali a long, long time, and then latterly he was kitman there. Kitman when he won the Scottish Cup at Cali Thistle. Doc's retired from the fire service now, but Doc, what a player Doc was, you know. And I saw him once. I was playing for the Vale up there, and incredibly we actually beat them 2-1, which was a real shock. It was one Christmas, and we were up there, and the Doc never liked to waste a ball. If you ever saw him play, you know, he never wanted to waste a ball. So this day we were chipping at him, and the Doc was going back towards his own goal and back towards his own goal. It was at Telford Street, obviously, and he was at Howden End, you know, the end in the right-hand side that you went past as you come in. And he's going back towards the Howden End and back towards the Howden End, and he couldn't get himself turned to play a pass. Never want to waste a pass, so we're pushing him back, and eventually he must have been about 6 or 7 yards from his own byline, and he turned and chipped it back to an unexpected Billy McDonald, and he chipped it right into the top corner of his own goal, and, which turned out, I think, to be the winner for us. It was the best own goal I've ever seen. Only the Doc could have scored it, you know, but he's adamant he was never going to waste a ball. So he had, although Martin and Herch and these boys could certainly play, the Doc had so much finesse in there as well. And you also had guys, you know, Inverness Thistle, and then he came back to go to Cali after being at Celtic, was Charlie Christie. You know, you could look at Charlie as a striker possibly as well, but, you know, Charlie could certainly play in there. You know, you look at the Huntly sides, Yatesar, although I played with Yatesar at Keith Martin, he had 4.5 championship medals with you, and which I'll be reminding him of. Eddie Copeland, brilliant operators, you know, Stevie Lennox, what a player Stevie was, and you know, barring injury, could have been even better. He had a fantastic career as it was, but, you know, at Peterhead and Huntly, Michael Teasdale at Elgin City, in the strong Elgin side, with you know, with his brother, was fantastic. And another one that I really liked was Mickey McPherson at Bucky Thistle. Mickey again could play that a little bit further forward, but I always started in a midfielder. And Dave, you're probably the same as me as a goalkeeper. Whatever goal you let in, you always thought, oh, I wonder I could have done this, or maybe I could have done that. There was always that little bit of doubt, apart from one goal that Mickey McPherson scored at Victoria Park, left-hand goal 1,000 years ago. Ball came over, I don't know, knee height, edge of the box, and Mickey hit this thing. And in those days, Huntly had those great big crossbars, if you can see it on the screen, you know, that were about, the Vale had them as well. They were about 1 foot deep, and it hit the underside of the bar at the top corner, went right in. That's the only goal I can remember in my career that I thought, nah, you know. But Mickey McPherson was a great player, and again, 18 years at Bucky, something like that. The Ross County sides, the great county sides, you know, Gordon Connolly, Robbie Williamson, brilliant foil for each other, you know. Gordon made them tick. And then, you know, again, once Cove came into the league, Dougie Baxter, spell at Huntly obviously, but his best years at Cove, and Cove's first league winning captain. And Dougie again, Dougie could leave his foot in, but Dougie could play. Dougie could really play old school. A lot of time for Dougie. I bumped into him last week. He's sadly lost his dad just last week there, but Dougie, wonderful player. Raymond Jewell, another one. I mentioned Raymond earlier when I was talking about his laddie. We talk about qualifying cup. Darcy, I can't remember you were with us. I think it was before you were with us. We played at Christie Park, and Cove beat us 4-2, and Raymond Jewell scored 3 identical goals. Dave, you'd have been at the game, I'm sure.
Yeah.
We need to ask Colin Maver, because Colin Maver is meant to be picking him up every single time. But that's what Raymond was really good at, you know, getting into the box late, and really unassuming guy. And another player that I could have mentioned as a defender, but I first knew him as a midfield player, was Nigel Montgomery. Nigel Montgomery was a fantastic football player. Another 20 years at Vale, I had the pleasure of playing in Nigel's testimonial. I had the even greater pleasure of being at the party for about a day and a half after the testimonial game. And a little bit more, probably closer to current times, 3 guys at Fraserburgh that could have been strikers and could have been midfielders. Something I didn't really know about Scotty Murray, who went away. He's now Bristol City's kitman. Dave, we spoke about the other week there. Scotty Murray was a wonderful player. Marino Keith, and my pal Chris Hunter. Charlie Duncan, I believe once described, if you think of all the youngsters that Charlie Duncan had through his hands, once described Chris Hunter as the most naturally talented that he had. That's good enough for me, you know. Hunter could certainly play. Russell Guild, I thought Russell Guild was a great player. And I think, Martin, I can't remember if you said this in the last show or if we've had the conversation before, but I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I think you felt that Russell could have played in your 5 in a row.
Definitely.
Aye.
One of the finest players I've seen. If he could have tackled in header, he would have been a full-time professional. Absolutely top-notch player.
I'd agree with you, and I think the fact that you, having played with him, you know, felt he could have played in that team is high praise indeed. But I always thought he was a bit of a Rolls Royce of a player. He just looked immaculate. He was so upright, and he made those runs and he could score goals. And no, he was a super player. And another guy, a guy that I signed for Locos the same night as Tommy Wilson, and that's how I got no money, because Tommy obviously got it all as usual. But he was worth it. That was the difference. But Tommy was a great player, and Tommy was one I felt certainly when we were at the Lokies. And although we had 2 years there, Tommy had a lot longer. He had his testimonial, but I've only played him 1 year. And Tommy was one of those players that you would hear punters saying, "Oh, he's not doing this and he's not doing that, and he's not passing it forward enough and all." It's a piece of nonsense, and you knew that if you knew the game. But I'll tell you what, these supporters realised that when Tommy Wilson wasn't playing, and they were suddenly scratching their heads as to how they couldn't keep the ball, because Tommy could pass it anywhere in the pitch, but Tommy made good choices, and if it was on to keep it, he would keep it, you know. Tommy, I think, was a fantastic player. And another one, although I didn't play with him at the Locos, I played against him when I went to Cove, and he just joined the Locos as I left, was Neil McLean, who's you know, when you consider I've been retired 15 years, and Neil McLean, I played against Neil McLean, and he's fantastic, you know, and is a fantastic role model as well as a superb player. Again, you know, everyone watching this will be thinking, what about him and what about him? But those were some of the names that came to my mind. And this is where I've cheated, lads, because I've put in, because I've got 1 defender less, I've 4 players in here. Now, where they would all play in reality, I'm not really that bothered, because they're all fantastic football players. I've got Michael Teasdale I would have had on the right. And the rest could play whatever they want, to be honest. I've got in there Stevie Lennox, Charlie Christie, and Gordon Connolly. Now, whether all four could have played in the same team, I don't really know, but I don't think you could argue with the quality of any of them. Michael Teasdale had an engine to die for. Michael struggling with his back now, unfortunately, you know, but what a player he was. He had a great time at Cali Thistle as well, but in that Elgin City side, he was phenomenal. Charlie had it all, and you can see where the boy gets it from as well. Stevie Lennox, wow, I think we've all touched on Stevie Lennox's abilities. And Gordon Connolly. Gordon Connolly made that Ross County team that won the league twice, Bobby, you know, the early 90s. They had a lot of good football players in that team. That was one of the real, I thought, Dave, one of the real pure sides, you know. They went into that 3-5-2. That was one of the first teams to play it that I can remember anyway in my time, with Somerville on one side, I think Gary Campbell a lot of the time on the other side. But Connolly was the man in the middle, Cammy Robertson, Robbie at different times. Connolly really made them tick and had a killer pass about him as well. So, forgive me, I've cheated a little bit, but I've got four midfield players in there who can play whatever they want. Michael Teasdale, Charlie Christie, Stevie Lennox, and Gordon Connolly.
Thanks for that, Ian, and a wonderful look. And as Martin says, so many memories for people, possibly with Alzheimer's, or you know, they look and hear some of these names, and it might just pick up a recollection. Thanks for that, Ian.
I hope it does.
But Martin, there's only one thing missing in that. Near Rothie's players yet?
No, I was thinking that. Although part of your newspaper report at the beginning of the show, and a name probably just before your time, Ian, was Bobby Seavright. Was a great goalkeeper.
Yeah, I remember. See, I've got it in my head that Bobby played for Inverness Thistle as well, but I might be wrong there.
Yeah, he played for Inverness Thistle. Didn't make that select because he was Aberdeen based.
Yeah.
And he's got a unique record because I could actually remember he actually played outfield for Rothis in a game up at Ross County. Nothing to do with his super skills. We had 11 players fit and 2 goalkeepers, and that's exactly what he played.
I do remember the name. He might have been right at the start of my time, Martin.
Bobby Seavright. I think he had a moustache and he had spiky hair, Dave.
Spiky hair, that's right.
One out of 2's all right for you, Dave. Paul. Neighbours Part 2. Is this when did you have your return to Scotland, your cameo appearance for a Highland League side? Is that in the second half of your Australian career?
Well, I was yeah. So in a wee cameo, I came back. Now, first 2004. It was I think the 1st of November 2004. Brother were playing the Lokes in Brewery. So I've been in touch with I've built up relationships over the years, and a couple of guys who were close with Stevie Rothie, kept in touch with him. He was also running the Highland League website back at that time, and I kept in touch with him when I was in Oz. I'm sort of posting updates about Ugali and how we're getting on, myself, Grant and Stewart. So I come back from my mate's 30th on the Friday night. And I says to Rat, look, if there's anyone looking for players, give us a shout, so I'd be keen to keep the eye in. So, cut a long story short, left at, must be Thursday morning. Maybe Friday. I left Thursday morning, 36 hours in the plane. Never told my mum and dad I was coming home. I told my dad, I never told my mum. Surprised mum and dad. Went to my mate's 30th at night, and gets a message in the morning for the hotel. Bro's looking for a player. You've got to be in Inverurie for 1:45. I says, really? Because I hadn't heard. I just thought, nah, it's not happening. So I had more than a few in John Garden. I was in charge of the Lokes at the time. And I said to him, I said, look, I might be playing against you in the morning. Ah, you're full of... I says, no, I'm telling you. So I turned up, and Gordy Conley just touched on there. Gordy was assistant, and I'm doing a warm-up. And Gordy's like, Darcy, I think I have to start. Such and such has been caught in traffic in Inverness. He's not got to make it. I says, okay. And it was Neil McLean. Neil McLean second or third game for the club. He just signed for Elgin, so he was playing wide and left. against a fullback for being the Turks a whole night, and really looking forward to it. So we're shooting towards Old Meldrum in the first half, and if he got the ball, he tried to beat me up close, which was never going to happen. But if he put it past me 5 yards from me and run past me, I would never caught him. Anyway, so shooting towards Old Meldrum, 0-0, and I'm getting pelters from my ex-wife at the time. She that was her first trip back to Scotland. She was there. My dad's just giving me absolute dog's abuse. Get up, and doing. Come on, get going. Look at the net here. So he gave me that. So in at half time, 0-0. And obviously shooting the other way. Boy says, so at least you get rid of that second half. He says, no. My dad went round and stood beside the old the lookout post bit. It used to be sitting in the corner of the Loki's ground. So he's keen us. So doing 1-0, I thought, nah, we're going to get done. So Loki's gets a pen. So, boy, I can't remember who took it. Anyway, he's missed it. And I've turned to Gordy, because obviously the Brora dugout was right beside the bottom end of the ground. I said, we're going to get a result here today. So I've picked the ball up, picked the diagonal, and the boys crossed it, and the boys met at the back post, 1-1, and I ran up the halfway line, right up to John Gardner. I told you. So that was my wee cameo for Brora. So that was my last game in the Highland League. So that was November 2004, and then I went back to Oz, and then back to Oz. We go to 2009 with a league winning. Well, we finished second in the league, and then it swings around about. Finished second in the league. We didn't have a great season, and then we ended up getting through to the final. Now we took a guy out from Aberdeen, came and played with us, and he was offered. I don't know what he was offered. He was offered from Cash to go and play for Hamwood, the other Italian club in the town. So he jumped ship and went to play for them. So the semi-final, our keeper got sent off. So with a 16-year-old kid in goals, down a penalty shootout, and who should miss? But their big money signing from Ugali, Mr. Ryan Spencer, he missed the penalty that gave me my first bit of silverware for Ugali. So moving on from there, the next couple of years, I was getting on. I mean, I was at 34, 35. After a leg break, I didn't really feature that much because I couldn't get. I was never the quickest anyway, but I just lost that 2 or 3 yards. So I ended up playing a lot more for reserves and a few cameos. I'd maybe play for reserve team, then sit on the bench for the first team, and they put us on. Now this went right through 2012, 2011, 2012, 2013. I mean, just touching on that. I mean, over the years, the guys that came out, ex-Fraserburgh, P.A. Bruce, we've got Loki's top scorer at the moment, Chrissy Angus, he played with us. Dame Ballard, Devon Vale's striker, he was out. Derek McKechnie, he had a wee spell at Peterhead, I think he's playing for Hermes at the moment. Jamie Mackay came out. Now, Jamie came out and lasted 2 months. He just didn't like it. Now, I've met Jamie, his day and night, what he was in Australia to meeting him here, he just didn't, I think he was just homesick, he just didn't enjoy it. And then with Scotty Graham came out, currently with Clark, I think, is he? Scotty Clark? Dave?
Yes, I think he is. He was was he not at Strathspey for a wee while and he's back at Clark?
I think he went to Bucky started last season, then something happened, and then he went back to Clark. Obviously won a league with Brora.
Yeah.
I think he likes a baby and likes to go missing for days on end, but he's
allegedly.
Guy, so, well, aye, allegedly. So I mean, we getting through all that. I mean, getting the 2013 season, my last season at the club, we had the women's are a great side, which was coached by a good pal of mine, Tony Martinelli, who played with me right through. We became quite close. Tony was coaching them, his wife played, and there was a real family atmosphere about the club. So with the over 35s playing a Friday night, which I qualified for, just and then the women would play on the Sunday morning. Then first and reserves would play in the afternoon. So we're really with a good bunch of guys at the club. With Dane Ballard. Dane Ballard scored, I believe, 50 goals that season for us, plus, and with a fine jar, which if you were on television or you're in the paper, I think Dane contributed most ticks. He was never off the paper, never out the paper, never off the television. And I think that season the fine jar ended up we used that for the end of the season trip to Melbourne for a horse race. And I think it was $2,500 in a fine jar. So it was quite a hefty start for the end of the season kitty. So yeah, so the Friday night over 35s with the grand final, I was fortunate enough to score, and we won that one 2-1. Then the guy Andy Cousins also played that. He was an Englishman. He played over 35s as well. Played golf with him in the morning. Both of us were still half canned. Myself and Stevie Crombie and Andy and another guy played. And Andy said a hole-in-one on the 7th hole. So it was a big pilot on the tee. It was just, you should really see on a golf course. But that was a Saturday. The guy Mooney I touched on earlier on, he got suspended. He got two bookings he got a booking in the two bookings in semi-finals. He played for I think over 35s. He played for the first team. He missed the finals, which was heartbreaking. So we actually, there was a spoof, a parody of Hitler, and Mooney's not playing. And anyway, so it was all done for that parody thing. I was working in television at the time, so I was quite creative with that. So anyway, we get to the final on the Sunday afternoon. The women won theirs, and then we actually won. They were actually still playing golden goal. The reserve team, which I played for, the reserve team, we won ours, and the first team won theirs. So that was probably one of the best weekends that I'd had. I mean, we talked about Mad Monday earlier on. I think it turned into Mad Thursday. So the whole club, be it from the women's team right through, everyone just it was at least 2 or 3 days that we couldn't believe it. It was something that's never happened in the club, and no other club in that competition had ever done anything similar. So it was a great experience for me. And then that was much and such all about my Australian travels. But the boys I played with out there, Scotty Graham was immense. Chrissy Angus, I think Chrissy was only 22. He was really good. P.A. Bruce was there at the same time as Chris. He was good as well. I mean, these guys came out, enjoyed the lifestyle, and also we played against Gary McGowan. Gary McGowan was out for a spell as well. Played against Gary, and often caught with Gary because he stayed in Shepherd, and we had a swinging pass the way down to Melbourne. Was going to Melbourne, so it was all about relationships. And I still get anniversary today. Not so much phone calls on anniversaries, birthdays and Christmases. I get phone calls from the guys out there. So it was a massive part of my life, and I'm proud to be a part of that team and the whole club in that 2003. And I'm quite privileged to have the relationships that I've made with guys. Be it, I think I missed out on so much when leaving in the Highland League when I was 27 to go to travel. I feel that I could have made better, maintained more relationships here, but I wouldn't have had that relationship that I made over there. So it's catch-22. I've experienced a lot more than what other guys that like my pals, my close pals, they've got family and that here. I've got no family. They've stayed here, raised their kids and that. I've actually seen about the world. So do I look at positives and negatives from both. But yeah, the highs were very high out there and the lows were very low. But it's an experience that if anyone hears that anyone want to go out and do it, I think Calvin Roddy's just went out. Andy Roddy's son, he just went out and he's playing for the club. They actually start their season on Sunday. There's only going to be 9 games this year because it's all been delayed through COVID. But if there's anyone, it's an experience. Even you go out for a year and enjoy it. I had 10 years, which was probably the best 10 years of my life. Some of the best years of my life. Which are the best 10 years in general, but definitely some of the best years of my life. But it's an experience that anyone that wants to go out, grab it, travel.
as you say, Paul, as you say,
always come back.
it's a great experience for anybody. I mean, there's been lots of guys over the years. You know, we spoke right back, Dave, about Shorty McIntosh in the 60s, and it's been a regular occurrence over the years. You mentioned Shepperton. I'm thinking, is that where Mike Ewan was?
Yeah, he was Mike Ewan.
And the other name that comes to mind, who I believe is probably still in Australia, and that's Marek Madell. Marek Madell.
I think he's up the Gold Coast. But
I mean, between Marek Madell and Cammy Keith at Formartine, I don't know if you remember, he now used to sponsor the hat tricks at Formartine United.
Yeah.
Between Marek Madell and Cammy Keith, I financed a small distillery for about 2.5 years. I hate to think how many bottles of whiskey I supplied, but I think Marek's still out in Australia. He got a big move. He moved to an A-League side.
I think he did a trial with Newcastle Jets. He was based in the Gold Coast. So Newcastle's just a kick in the arse from the Gold Coast. But yeah, no, Franny Moore was out as well. So with the Scottish boys were sticking together, but I was fortunate to have a small Scottish contingent. Grant Davidson was one of the best players that I'm fortunate to play with. He's actually still playing. And he looks after himself. But no, as I said, anyone gets the chance to travel, I grab it with both hands.
Well, the message, I think the message is loud and clear, folks. If you get a chance, our time is gone. They've never ever seen anybody appealing for referees, appealing at referees, but never. Although Les Mottram finished his career in Japan, did he not? But that's for another day. Dave, over to you.
Yeah, not forgetting on the coaching side, of course, former Forrest and Bucky and a lad from Finechty, George Cowie. George Cowie's still in the Gold Coast over there and enjoying life with his wife Mandy. Martin, you played, 489 games for Huntly, scoring 309 goals, an amazing record, a one-man club, or a one-club man, but you did have chances to move from Christie Park into senior football.
Yeah, I had a lot of chance. First team was a trial at Aberdeen. Willie Miller was the manager. It was 1993, November 93. Went in, week's training. Roy Aitken seemed to be the man in charge. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Saw Willie Miller one day, the last day, he called me into his office. But I enjoyed it, and I seen, you see if it goes on in full-time fit back in, and I seen a full-on scrap in one of the games. Mixu Patalainen and Gary Smith. Punch was thrown. Well, they just started just fighting, just punching each other. Roy Aitken was in charge. Play on. Just let them get on with it. They're rolling about in the ground, punching each other, nothing. And I think Roy Aitken was maybe still a player because he marked me in one of the games and early on, just one elbow right in the face. But I think he was just trying me out again. But I mean, it never worked. I mean, for Willie Miller to be the manager and me to see him on the Friday when I went home, I'd never seen him a whole week. I found bizarre. But I mean, that's another thing. But 2 weeks later, we're playing Devon and Vale at Banff, and that's when the changing rooms are doing it at the bottom, as you come in with the turnstile. I was walking out just to get a warm up. Alex McLeish walks in. Now he's still an Aberdeen player, but of course Doogie was speaking to him and he says, "Oh, the big man's here to watch you today." But he must have got an inkling that he's a want to get a manager's job. But the long and short of it, the next pre-season, he invited me to go to Holland on tour with him. Thoroughly enjoyed it. The players were far more welcoming than the Aberdeen players were. Especially Paul Lambert. He was there and he was just really good to me. He would come and sit with me, when I'm a bit lost and I really can't what's going on. The same with McLeish and Andy Watson, I said, "We understand you'll be nervous and that, but just try and relax and just play your fit." But I really enjoyed it. I mean, we played 4 games and I scored 3 goals. And at the end of it, McLeish said to me at the airport, this is his exact words, and I'll never forget him. We would love to sign you, but we can't afford the 50,000 Huntly would want for you. So that was the end of it. Whether he said that and he meant it, or he just for my confidence, I don't know. But the next time, I mean, there was plenty of times Pelly would say to me, I mean, I got the chance to sign for Chelsea, and I said I'm not interested. And I got a chance to sign again for Dundee United, and I got a chance to sign for West Brom. And later on in 1997, I was playing a game at Rothie. This is a story. Dundee had agreed a fee with Huntly, 35,000 to sign me. John McCormack came up, was in the stand watching the game. I think he wanted to get a deal done with Huntly, and then he would speak to me to see if he could agree on things. Well, 10 minutes in, up for a header, dodgy pitch at Rothie, hour my uncle, ambulance job to Dr. Grace. So that was a deal off for that, Ian. And then 2 or 3 days later, they signed Eddie Annan for Clyde for 75,000. But I mean, that was it. But if Aberdeen wanted me, I made a give it a chance, but I was not interested. And I'm really comfortable with my decision. I have no regrets about ever turning on it doing, because it was not something I wanted to do. I would be pretty sure. I mean, I'm a bit of a home bird. I'm staying in Huntly all my life. I'm a pretty boring kind of guy. I like just going to work, playing golf, and I don't like none of the. And I'd be pretty sure I would have been homesick if it come to that. And although folk will say it, I'm pretty confident that I wasn't that good enough to mark it as a pro. I mean, back in that day, that like Aberdeen would have had 40 boys in their staff, only 30, and a lot of reserve and all that. But the main reason would have been I would have been homesick. So I'm really comfortable with that, and I've got no regrets. I'd rather just, I mean, at that time at Huntly, I was getting decent money as a joiner, and I was getting good money at Huntly, and I was happy, and I'll never regret it. And as I say, I'm comfortable with my decision and that. So that's it.
Martin. That would have been one of my questions, no regrets, but you've made it abundantly clear. You had no regrets whatsoever. No, you are happy with your hometown team.
None at all.
Thanks, Martin. Back to Martin.
No, I'm conscious the clock is ticking here, and we're not going to have a third attempt. So we'll maybe do some selective editing, Dave. But before we do that, back to Ian, the all-important forward line, your strike force.
The strikers. I'll try not to drag it out, Martin. I'm conscious of your time as well. The guys I played with, Charlie Barber, wonderful, not only a fantastic striker and a guy with brilliant feet, I thought, Martin, for a big guy, good feet, good touch, but also a heart of gold. Looked after me when I went to Keith at first. Could drink like a fish as well, but a brilliant big guy. And a super player, great finisher. James Pirrie, I played with James at the Vale and at Keith, again an excellent finisher. Another guy I played with at Keith only for a short period, but it was Elgin City as well, and he'd been senior for a little while, was Les Armstrong. And I don't even remember Les, striker, great touch player. Derek Nichol, who went on to score 200 goals for Keith, started as a striker obviously the time I played with him. A couple of the guys that played beside him, Neil McRitchie and Keith Robertson, who's doing such a great job just now in Martin Johnson's behalf. Those were some of the guys I played with. Cammy Keith, who's now the club's record scorer, was obviously after my time. In terms of the guys I played against and from whom I would choose, in my third game for Devon Vale, believe it or not, away back in 1983, the debut was against Elgin. We lost 4-0 on the Saturday. The Wednesday we played at Peterhead at Recreation Park and we lost 2-0. On the Saturday I had my home league debut against Inverness Clach. With our first victory, we won 4-3. Duncan Shearer scored 2 for Clach, got sent off along with Donald Buchanan, our centre half, and signed for Chelsea the next day. I don't believe that there was any direct link with being sent off at Princess Royal Park, being sent to those changing rooms of which you mentioned, Martin. So I had experience of playing against Duncan there, but he was away obviously just in my first week. Appropriate, I think, to talk about the front three there from Huntly. I knew the numbers around about that, Martin. I was guesstimating, looking back, that you guys would, I often say to people, that you guys would get about 100 goals between you in a season. I don't think I was far off it. I thought you were a brilliant foil for each other, because I thought you were all different, but you all complemented each other. That's Martin Stewart, obviously, guys. Brian Thompson, Gary White. Brian Thompson's a brilliant striker of the ball, great with dead balls as well as everything else, and huge contributors in that team. At Cali, Billy Urquhart, I've spoken of, the legend, phenomenal career, both before he went to Rangers and after he came back from Wigan. Ray McIntosh, when I was at Cali as a kid, Raymond was there, and I played against him. He was at Ross County. Alan Duff and Brian Grant followed him into Ross County side and played in the league winning side, did a brilliant partnership. Gio scored loads of goals. I think Duffers did the spade work. A guy that played in the Forest Mechanics league winning side in the mid-80s was Graham Rodger, senior. Obviously, his lad is at Formartin now. And Graham Rodger was a superb player. Off the park, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet, one of the quietest guys. I met him a couple of years ago in a super conversation with him. On the park, you knew he was there. He could leave his foot in, but he was a brilliant, brilliant player and a big part of Forest Mechanics. John Teasdale, I've mentioned, played against John when he was at Elgin City, and as a player manager, he certainly knew a player. He brought in guys like Samuel Eonts, who came up from down south and was a phenomenal striker as well. But John himself was a great, great player, great striker of the ball as well. Iain Stewart, we've mentioned, Lossiemouth, and Pelly signed him obviously for Cali Thistle for about £30,000, and Stewart, he was a big contributor going through the leagues with Cali Thistle. But what a player I've always felt with Stewart. He was so sharp up top. He could finish. He could lead the line well. He was so intelligent. I don't know anything about playing full time, but I suspect if Stewart had maybe half a yard more pace, he would have made it at a higher level. I know he was at Dundee with Yateser and these lads, youngster, but what a player Iain was. In terms of the wide players, Billy Ferris and Barry Wilson. Billy at Ross County and at Elgin. Barry at Ross County at the same time as him. Scary, Ferris on one side, Wilson the other. Wilson Robertson at Cali, great players. Pace, could all play the game, could all finish. I'll tell you one story, Martin, if I may, on Billy Ferris. We've all touched upon the great camaraderie of Highland League football. About 3 or 4 years ago, I was hosting a dinner at the Marriott Hotel, and the guy came through during the coffee break. He said, "Oh, Mr. Thain, there's someone asking for you in the bar." And of course, I was in the middle of the dinner, but it was a coffee break, and curiosity killed the cat. So I popped through Billy Ferris. "Oh, hi, Thainers, you want a dram?" "No, Billy, I'm working, but thanks anyway." I said, "I'll be back through." He was down. Scott was up with Aberdeen at the time. It was a Saturday night. They had a game on the Sunday, and then the family was going on holiday on the Monday from Aberdeen, so they were down for a couple of nights. I said, "Billy, I'll be clear about the back at 12. I'll come through." And he said, "Oh, I might be awake in my bed." I said, "Billy, it's Saturday night. You've never been in your bed that early on a Saturday night. I'll see you at 12:30. So I went through. The residence bar was quite busy. We sat and had a drink, and the place gradually emptied out, hopefully not due to our presence. It got to about 4:30. The night porter asked us if we wanted anything more. He then gave us a couple for the road, showed us where the lights went off in the residence bar at the Marriott, and headed away home to his bed, and left me and Billy Ferris as the last two standing. But Billy could play, and as you all know, and he was so quick and still a great player. Went to Brora as player manager along with the late great Hershey. But Barry Wilson Robertson, fantastic. The Broch lads, Michael Stephen, now down in Australia. Michael started his life while I know Michael could play through as well, but twice Highland League Player of the Year, Dave, I think, if I remember rightly. Yep. Fantastic player, so direct, very, very good finisher. You talk about finishers, Michael Beattie and Kenny Cool. I mean, Michael Beattie scored something like 310. I mean, Martin, phenomenal record, my friend. Beats in that team, 310 goals in 320 games. It's ridiculous, Kenny Cool, he always said Kenny Cool was probably his best partner, and Kenny was, again, a much underrated player. And at Cove, one guy that I had the pleasure of playing with, but I played against him more than that, was Martin Johnson, and obviously Martin's got his health issues as time speaks. And I was talking to Keith Robertson just the other day, about Martin's fundraising and obviously along with everyone else offering our help. And if anyone can attack this with the support of his Highland League friends, it's Martin Johnson, a lovely big guy, a lovely family. And I'm sure we all wish him well. Martin could play, and again another one that up top, when he came to Cove when I was there, we were an average side. John was just building it, and you could see the things Martin was doing. And at the time, some of ours weren't quite in his wavelength, because he'd come back and was just such an intelligent player. And two others that I mentioned earlier as well, when I was talking about Greg Carroll at Devon Vale, and Greg had one of these lads at Bucky as well, was Ian Murray Molby. I know he always gets a mention, Dave. We couldn't miss him out. But Ian Murray and Mike McKenzie, what a partnership when they were at their peak, when the Vale became champions. The Vale had a good side, Robbie Brown and Mark Chisholm and all these guys, as we well know, and Daz McAllister and Yogi. But Ian Murray and Mike McKenzie, to me, made the difference, as top quality players do. Again, Martin, lots of names I could pick out. I've got three strikers. Because I've got this 3-4-3, I've got three strikers to pick out. Astonishing, and I'm not saying it just because you're on the call, Martin, but for me, not to include any of the three Huntly lads with the records you've got is borderline ridiculous, I would suggest. But you'll maybe understand me. You see the players. I'll be honest with you guys, when I started to write this team down, Billy Urquhart's name was the first name I wrote on the whole thing. Billy Urquhart's got to be in a Highland League select as far as I'm concerned. Alongside him, I've got Ian Stewart. And my third striker, I put a wide player in. With Michael Teasdale being on the right side and going up and down, it would probably have made more sense to have Wilson Robertson or Barry Wilson in the side. But because of the Marriott Hotel incident, Billy Ferris gets the nod. No, seriously, it's difficult to choose between them. Billy Ferris, Barry Wilson, Wilson Robertson. I wanted to put a wide player in. So my front three, gentlemen, is Billy Ferris, the legend that is Billy Urquhart, and Ian Stewart.
Superb. Superb, Ian. We'll all put a team up at the end for the viewers to see. Who would you have managing the team, Ian?
Managers, I think the guys, the obvious candidates would be Steve Patterson, who, as I've said before, although I've never played for Pell, I know every single person that has, rated him massively. Charlie Duncan, Greg Carroll, Charlie Rowley. I think Charlie's just done 10 years. I think hugely underrated, perhaps in some ways, although I know very much within Highland League circles. John Sheeran, 6 titles I think John had. And Bobby Wilson. Bobby had, I think, 3 titles with Keith, and he had 2 with a county side that he took from being bottom of the table and having gone all amateur. He took them to the championship. All those guys would have a fate, but I'm biased, and I'm going to put the man in charge as the man who was the best manager I ever played for, and that was Martin Allen. Martin Allen took us to a championship in 2000 when we didn't have any money, and then he also took another side when he did have a couple of quid to spend, and he took the side, I think it was 2006, 2007, when he brought in, and again, you talk about spending money, but he spent money on real quality like Mark Perry, Martin Wood, these sort of guys, and he built another team along with a few of the guys from before. So I believe when you boil down all the trophies that he did win this time, he'll be up there, if not the most successful. He's certainly up there with Bobby, I would imagine. So my manager would be Martin Allen.
Superb, Ian. Right, guys, I'm really conscious of time. We are going to finish this. Dave, over to you.
Yeah, very briefly, 4 of those teams, Thain, have been guests on the show. It's wonderful. Dave Milroy, Billy Ferris, Charlie Christie and Billy Urquhart we've had in the last few weeks, so thanks for that.
I have been actually secretly selecting my top 11 players by inviting folk on the show. Sorry, Martin, Thainer's let aside doing the night.
Darcy, we're closing in 3 hours. Very briefly, who's the best player you've either played with or against in Highland League football?
Very, very, very brief. I've got as I said, I've got a list of 4 played with. Mickey McPherson, outstanding. Played up front, midfield, centre half. The legend is just, for me, is one of the all-time greats in the Highland League. I'm very fortunate enough to say I played in the same team as him. And if I'm ever I'm actually in Bucky, I'll give him a shout. Second on the list is Darren Still. Fortunate enough to play with Stilly at Keith. Phenomenal organiser, great engine. Didn't never give the ball away, and then he could score. He could score goals for fun. Third on the list is Grant Davidson, who I touched on a play with Ugali, ex-Clach. You know, we spent at Ross County, full-time at Ross County. That never worked out for him. Went to Fort William and then went to Clach, and then he's been in Australia since 2004. And lastly on this list, it's bizarre. It just came to me this afternoon. He was underrated, but he was a fullback, and he played right back behind me at my first season at Bucky. Is a guy, Ian Bruce. Brewster was just hard as nails. The Fawns, as Fritz used to call him. But getting on the guys I played against, you touched on Stevie Gray earlier on. He was on the list. I've got the current Vale manager, touched on earlier on, Dippy. Dippy always a battle against Dippy. Jiggers at Keith, which he was just phenomenal. And going back to the last time I was on, Don McVicker. Don, with battles with Don, utmost respect for Don, a true gent. God rest his soul. He was just an arse to play against, but a great guy to have on your team as well. But probably the toughest opponent I had in the Highland League was fullback for Peterhead, all arms and legs, a guy called Jim Cheen, which he was just so physical, but he'd elbow you in the face and wouldn't mean it, because he used to run like this. So that's it. And I realise we're running short of time, but thanks for that. Over to you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for the memories, mate.
No bother.
Martin, before I come back to yourself, I'm just going to touch on, you mentioned Mickey McPherson there. Mickey actually started at Rothie, believe it or not, when Johnny Cowie was the manager. I'm friends with Mickey on social media. He was a great player, but I'll tell you this now, folks.
Shite dancer.
He's a hopeless dancer. He's a hopeless dancer. Martin, we've heard Ian's choice of manager for his select team. You've played under a lot of managers at Huntly. Go on, very, very briefly, talk us through them and give us your thoughts on each one.
Well, I'll start with Pelly. Obviously, almost do I think to him. He signed me. He signed the players that made Huntly successful. I mean, I've heard it this before. The great asset he has is the man, the eye for a player. I mean, he plucked out Stevie Lennox for East Fife, Stevie Gray for, I've no idea for, took a chance with Dougie Rugby at 36-year-old, Ken. Just a manager you want to play for, Ken. Treated you like men. Ken, when it come to warm-ups, understood that this rubbish about team warm-ups, garbage, Ken. Dougie Rugby, Gary White, they were not interested in team warm-ups. He knew different boys need different things for a warm-up. Let you get on with your things. If I would say, he signed a player, he says, we need a right midfielder, right winger, I'll get Stevie Gray. He wouldn't sign another in. He's got 11 boys in his mind, that's his team. If they're available, they'll play. And he's got boys like Davy McGinley, if I could slot in various positions, Alan Dunster, but just a great guy to play for. And you never ever see him shouting and bawling. And in a game we lost against Cooter in a pre-season friendly, walked in, put on his jacket and went home, said nothing. And when he walked out the door, the dressing room is a case in a lot of Highland League dressing rooms, the arguing started, Ken. Why if it went wrong in the game. Things were sorted out in the dressing room, whether he meant it or no. He was away home and it was sorted out and he came back and it was never mentioned again. But he also did a thing I found really interesting. You go to Brower or something, you get a bit of paper. I went, you write down your fit you 5 things should be playing, fit formation, 4 should be playing for. that gave him an insight into what other players were thinking. Can if other players are saying somebody should be right back and we're not playing him at right back, why is that? I found that really interesting. And it also give you a bit of paper with fits your favourite position, fits your second favourite position. So you just try to get into your mind a wee bit. But a great man management and all that, Ken. But I mean, I owe him and I got a bad word to say about him. Going to Doogie Rugby, it'll surprise you here when I say this. Quiet man, almost shy, I would say. And I think I don't think he wasn't as comfortable being speaking in front of folk as you would think. But I mean, he knew football and all that, but I just felt he wasn't as comfortable as some managers. I spoke earlier about Phil Bonnyman, absolutely different class. Nobody knew him, and he learnt me basic things about how to beat throw-ins, things that were so simple, but nobody ever taught me how to receive a bar. And he was by miles the best coach in training I've ever seen. And I will mention we won the league again under Billy Anderson, and I will say that when he took over, 2 players were signed, myself and Russell Gill, the year after Huntly won the league. And he took all those boys for the juniors, and myself, Dave McGinley, Marco, Levi Stephen, Scotty Anderson, and boys that were in the juniors. And Richard Bowman, as spoke earlier, Thain, was a player of the season for us, was absolutely magnificent. And I've never seen him be so happy to win a medal, and I was so happy for him. And it was like he won a lottery when he got his medal. Okay? But Billy Anderson, just enthusiasm he had, he did a remarkable job here, and it's a pity we couldn't go farther into that. But not only that, I mean, ahead of that, man, Fraser Kellis was a manager, John Gardner was a manager. I will mention Willie Larson here. He was assistant manager all through and he was so important to Huntly. No training or on thing, just in the dressing room. Any problems, you went to Willie. Organised everything. I mean, Pelly couldn't organise nothing. The worst timekeeping you've ever seen in your life. But Willie would sort out everything, tell you far to be, if it's fun, you're getting picked up and everything. And he was just a great guy. I seen him play for Huntly, but now when you see all this sites, I didn't realise how good a player Willie maybe was at Carly and that. But he's a great guy, and we'll just leave it at that because we're running short of time. But great guys.
Thank you for that, Dave.
Thank you, Martin. And you made my night. You mentioned Dickie Bowman, former Rothie's goalkeeper. Wonderful.
Oh, wait a minute. The last thing I could say, you give me us 309 goals, 489. Well, that was in my testimonial programme. Fast forward the next year when I was helping out Billy Anderson and the dugout, first game of the season, no enough players, will you play? We're playing Rothie's at Huntly. My last game was for Huntly against Rothie's. I managed to score a goal, so last game, last goal for Huntly against Rothie's.
310 then, 3-1-0.
Brilliant.
Wonderful. Okay, Martin and Paul, your thoughts on Thainer's all-time Highland League 11?
Well, I'll easily go first. I wrote down some myself, and I'm glad you picked Davy Morland. People think he was just a hard man and obviously referees had a hard time with refs, and he brought it on himself. But he's the finest defender I played against or I've seen in the Highland League, and he's a far better footballer than folk give him credit for. Absolutely magnificent player. And he mentioned Stevie Lennox, and he's the finest player I ever played with. Again, nothing fancy, but I wrote down his names. I put goalie Craig Hinchcliffe, defenders Morland, Furphy, Ian MacArthur, midfielders Charlie Christie, Michael Teasdale, Alan Hercher, Billy Ferris, and an early Gary Farker at Brora, who was a fantastic player. And the strikers I've got Stewart at Lossy, Michael Stephen at Brock. And again, you spoke of Michael Beattie. Nobody speaks about him when they speak about great Highland League strikers. And he scored more goals than I have. Just an absolute goals machine. And that's the names I've got. So Ian's thing was, I would have had 7 or 8 of them, man.
Wonderful, Martin. Thank you for that. And Paul, your thoughts?
I'm much in such as long as saying, but a mix of the two. I mean, the goalkeeper, I obviously Thain here. Thain would be up there. John Gardner would be. I'd throw him in the mix as well. Obviously, being any players for that 5 in a row side. When you got Eddie Copeland, Eddie be in there. I'm fortunate enough to work with Eddie for Martin Lartley. Stevie Dolan is all names that these guys have rattled off, or Thain rattled off. You could pick a team from any of them. I think striker definitely Stewarty, definitely wee Stewarty. I was fortunate enough to play against him. Unfortunate enough to play against him. My first season, his last season when he went to Cali, just brilliant. Just a low centre of gravity, and he knew where the back of the net was. Defensively, as Martin just said, Davy Moore, he excellent reader of the game. Excellent reader of the game. He got it, and he try and play football for the back, which was really unheard of. I mean, your guys in there to win the ball and just get rid. But Davy get a ball at his feet and play passes. Obviously, Yates had his 4.5 medals. He'd make a mix.
Yeah, I like that.
But as I touched on, for me, because I played with him for 6 years, Mickey McPherson would be in that team. Going more up to date. Graham Grant, wee Grapies. He'd an excellent career, battled about. Other guys I played with, try to think. But yeah, no, I think Thain, Gordy Conley. Gordy was a horrible little so-and-so to play against, but he got in amongst the Mark DeBarris on his day. Was unplayable.
I think what you're really saying, Paul, and I think we cannot agree here, is it's only once you start listing the names you realise how quality the Highland League is. It's got a rich bed of talented players who may have had careers, and we got the benefit of them when they're towards the end of their careers. There's guys who, like Martin, could quite well have played at a higher level. That we'll never know, but we're fortunate he spent his career in the Highland League, and we saw him week in and week out. Tough ask, Iain, and no doubt the viewers will have their own opinions over the next few days or so. Yes, Martin?
That's what I was going to say. It's a great thing. It's somebody's opinion. Whether they think it's right, it's just somebody's opinion.
Yep.
But I will say, I forgot to mention here my 2 strike partners, Lugs and Whiter, because I never wrote it down. But Gary White, for me, although I scored 300 something goals, I could almost guarantee that he was involved in 100 of that goals. The most important player for my career, bar none.
Brilliant. Dave, do you have a head scratcher, a head scratcher for this week?
I do. I noticed it's getting off a darkening for Rothie Thane.
Cutting back on the lights, Davey, you know.
Well, there's a man been mentioned quite a few times tonight. His name is Stevie Patterson. He was the first European player to play in Japan. He played in the J League for Yomiuri, and before that he played for Hong Kong Rangers. But Sam was between those 2 clubs. He played in Australia, like you, Darcy. He played for a club called Sydney Olympic.
Sydney Olympic.
He was signed by a Scottish manager, and part of his duties was to be the babysitter for that Scottish manager's family. It was a famous Scottish manager. Who was the famous Scottish manager who signed Stevie Patterson for Sydney? And it wasn't the first time he'd signed Pelly.
Can we tell you the answer just now?
No. How do you tell us? How do we find out the answer, Dave? How do folks give us the answer?
As Martin Stewart knows, you go on Twitter and you go at Up the Dooney and fire through your answer, and you might just be right.
I'm not on Twitter, and I can see Martin's just a way to say I'm going to say.
Guys, it's been a struggle. And it's probably a record time, but we've got through it, and I can't but thank you for making the effort to come back. Once again, Paul Darcy, Martin Stewart and Iain Thane, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Next week, our guest list is, we will have a former Highland League player whose father was a former dandy. We'll have a former Highland League player who once appeared in a BBC Scotland television drama. And we'll also have a former player and manager who is undoubtedly a Highland League legend. And I've got to confess, I think he's a hero. Thank you. Stay safe.
Ooh.
Good night.